Welcome to the CatFiveBoys podcast. I am your host, Matt, and I'm here with my very special guest, Rob Noerr. Introduce yourself, let them know where they can find you.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here. The name is Rob Noerr. I am a political streamer and debate streamer. They can find me in Normal America with Rob Noerr, YouTube, Normal America on Rumble, and some form of Normal America or just my name, Rob Noerr, on all other social media platforms, including X. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Um, just a couple of pre-show announcements. Oh, first and foremost, thank you for joining me for the 29th episode of the CatFiveBoys podcast. Just a couple of pre-show announcements and kind of instructions, I guess, to go through before we get started. Welcome to the show again. Disclaimer, the views expressed on the CatFiveBoys podcast by the individual guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the CatFiveBoys podcast. Further disclaimer, the topics that we speak on during the show can sometimes get a little bit dark, a little bit sensitive. If that's not your cup of tea, this might not be the show for you. Maybe you want to go put on some Coco Melon. It's up to you. We have clips. If you can't catch the full shows and you want to get some of the best bits, we post clips on YouTube. If you're watching here on YouTube, we post clips on YouTube Shorts. We have clips on Instagram and TikTok. All of my socials are at Cat5Boys, so you guys can go check that out. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love to have you on. Maybe you want to talk about something going on in your life that's very interesting to you. Maybe you want to have a debate with me about some topic you disagree on. You know, the fact that I think women shouldn't be able to vote, maybe, possibly, who knows. Or maybe you disagree with some view from a past guest and you want to have a possible debate with them. We'll try to get that set up. We had that one with Aubrey Kana and from Dirt We Grow. We had that debate. It was a fun time. So maybe you want to do that. We can definitely get that scheduled as soon as possible. Just DM us on Instagram at Cat5Boys. Let us know a little bit about yourself, what you kind of want to speak about, and we'll definitely set that up as most convenient for the both parties. Make sure to like, make sure to comment. We love the comments here. Drop likes on the video. Subscribe. You know, if it's not too much trouble, go right ahead and do that. Drop us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on all those. Give us a 5-star rating. But we love the comments. You know, that's the greatest. If you guys have any sort of criticisms, you know, you guys have any sort of nice comments to leave, even hate, you know, you want to say something mean, I love that too. You know, it's no problem. We stream on Twitch. So we stream on Twitch every single Saturday at 6 p.m. If you want to catch that, it's going to be Saturday. Sometimes I don't get on, but for the most part I do. And that's around 6 p.m. Eastern time on Twitch at Codename Soak. The link to that will be in the description down below. So we have a merch store as well. Now, the merch, I don't like to call it that because it's a little bit special to my heart. So I'm a Catholic, and one of the aspects of my faith is my devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. One of the things that she left us was the rosary, a powerful praying tool, I guess, for lack of a better word. And we sell those on the shop down below in the Etsy store. You guys want to check that out? You can. No, you don't necessarily have to buy one. We're going to be adding more things as we go along. We have some things there right now. If anything catches your eye, even if you just check it out, I really do appreciate it very, very much. With that being said, and without further ado, let's start the show. Rob, thank you so much again for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I know you're probably a very busy guy, so I thank you for taking time out of your day to have a conversation with me.
It's my pleasure. I was telling you right before I came on, I was coming from my in-laws' place and living in rural Pennsylvania here. I've been extremely lucky, and I hit a deer for the first time in my car for like the first time in 12 years. So smashed a headlight, but I'm all right. So I was taking a little pictures of that before I came up, and but you know what? All in all, pretty good evening for me. So it's my pleasure to be here.
That's good. That's good. Well, like I said, at least it wasn't too much damage, nothing like that. Everybody's safe. That's the most important thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Don't they say that? I mean, I could be wrong, but don't they say that that's like a good luck thing to hit a deer?
They say that, but when you live here, you don't feel that way. I've been very lucky, like around here, it's especially this time of year, you know, they're running so bad. Like, I can't believe I've really been in the upper echelon of luck of not hitting one. So,
Is it
that
actually
was
that
not a
common?
bad thing. Oh, yeah, very common.
Wow.
Yeah, my parents have had 2 cars that they whacked deer with. My sister in law hit at least 3 in the past 5 years. So,
Sheesh.
she lives a little more in the woods than me, but yep.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's got to happen at some point, you know? It's got to happen at
Yep,
some
yep.
point. But you know, the worst part is you got to get that car fixed now, and it's a whole hassle.
My
But
other car, the alternator just went out of, so
what was that?
the alternator went out of my backup car. So now I'm down to 0 cars for the
Oh,
short term. But my mother-in-law gave us her nice swell car for the weekend. So, but it's all right. I don't got anything going on other than trick or treating, so it'll work out just
oh
fine.
yeah, Halloween's coming up tomorrow. That's
Yep.
that's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Well, I mean, when it rains, it pours. Apparently that's what they say. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and also congratulations on 20K. You hit that,
Thank you.
and that's awesome. Well deserved, 100%. So
Thank you. It's taken years and years. I've been streaming since 2008, I think, or 18. So, yeah, thank you very much. It's been a lot of work, but I appreciate it.
100% well deserved, 100%. Hopefully, many, many more. Obviously the involvement with the Crucible and doing all of that. I know that they're like the fan base for the Crucible is a very powerful one. They're very they're very loyal, very dedicated. So definitely good to have them on your corner, so to speak. But other
Great
than that,
people. They're
what's that?
mean to me. But I said the audience from the Crucible. I think they built one of the best communities online. They're very mean to me. They're telling me right now that my mic sound good, but my voice is annoying. I was like, nothing I can do about that now. It's 41 years too late.
That's the Crucible. They're mean to you. Are you serious? You're like you're awesome. What do you
Oh my
mean?
goodness! But that's how men are, right?
No,
They're
that's how
they're
it
a little
is.
pleased
That's how
with
it is.
each other. So, yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, that's
You
how
should
it
see when
is.
I co-host the Extravaganza with Jake Rattlesnake and Mystery from the Crucible. It's ruthless. You'd think we were bitter enemies, but yeah, we're actually all good friends. So
No, it's awesome. I love the banter you guys have between each other, and obviously like the commentary you guys give on all the videos you react to and everything like that. I
yeah,
love watching the extravaganza. Jake is awesome as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just on like it's an honor truly to have you on the show. But
well,
with
thank
that being said, without further ado, let's get right into the Reddit section of the show now. So we're gonna go
you. You
through
got it.
some Reddit posts right now, and we're gonna start with political discussion. Um, and let's let's see here. Let's
I'll be
do.
I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if we hear more than 2 brain cells of people coming from Reddit. Not where I usually go to for intelligent conversation, but definitely humorous. I'm usually liking that. So
Oh, you go through Reddit posts. I do this every episode. It's a trip sometimes. It's definitely surprising some of the reasoning these people give on their
oh my
posts.
goodness. Yep.
All right, so we'll do this one right here. What electoral dynamics emerge when NYC mayoral candidates diverge significantly from traditional Democratic messaging? Zorhan Mad I can't even pronounce that name.
Donnie,
The,
DJ Kratom, that's what I call him. He used to be a DJ. I actually think his DJ name was DJ Cardamom. But yes, Zorhan Mamdani.
we got AOC, the former bartender. We got Mamdani, the former DJ now. Oh, come on. Mamdani's entry into the NYC mayoral race represents a generational shift in Democratic candidates. Assembly member at 33, first Muslim to run citywide with a platform distinct from establishment Democrats. Historically, how have opposition parties responded when facing candidates who reshape traditional coalition boundaries? What factors determine whether such candidates expand their party's base versus creating new vulnerabilities? Given NYC's role in shaping national political narratives, how might this race influence broader discussions about the future direction of urban democratic politics?
It's actually not a bad question, right? So I'm surprised the
That
first one.
yeah, that's actually
Uh,
surprising.
Yeah, so let's look at it this way. Historically, these things could go like in many different directions, but usually there's sort of a return to the mean. So if you get a candidate that's like ahistorical and sort of outside the scope of what the predefined like boundaries of the Republican and Democratic Party, most of the time, eventually what you'll see is a return to the mean after some amount of time when it comes to these cities. Now, of course, your Overton window is always shifting, and in my belief, our politics have become more and more left leaning in many ways, particular social ways, over the decades. My anticipation, specifically, what's going to go on here is the Democrat Party is actually in a lot of trouble. And the reason is because they've built themselves on this fractured, almost like identity politics coalition. And there's a lot of groups that don't have a lot in common. For example, the LGBT section of the Democratic coalition probably doesn't have much in common with the Muslim coalition. In fact, by almost any objective metric, like a practicing Muslim is going to be harsher on the LGBT community than a practicing Christian. And so when you factor that in, and then you factor in sort of how the base is getting fractured, and you have one portion of the base it's becoming more and more socialist, more and more progressive. And the other portion of the base, which is sort of this sort of corporatist, business as usual, like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer wing of the party, it's actually an interesting diagnosis to see what happens with the Democrats going forward. The energy is all with something new. It's all with sort of the progressive base. But I don't know that that's necessarily the correct diagnosis for how the Democrats are going to get victories. They're still looking at the 2024 election and they're saying, like, well, where did we go wrong? How did we lose to Donald Trump again? And they're coming up with all the wrong answers. It's racism. It's because Kamala Harris was black, or it's bigotry. It's because she was a woman, or it's because we need more radically socialist policies. And so I think it is going to be that Mamdani's likely to win. And you see that sort of the big opposition, it's not going to be the Republican Curtis Sliwa. It's going to be Cuomo, the former mayor there, who's going to be running as an independent, who's basically the old school Democrat. And I think he'll lose out to Mamdani. And we'll see what the national coalition of the Democrats do. Do they decide to go to more of a progressive format because they think that that was a victory there? Well, I don't think that that's going to serve them well in the rest of the country. Democrats obviously totally control cities like New York. And so that's not a good cross section of how you're going to win purple states that are going to be necessary to win national level elections. So, I think ultimately, in my opinion, what's likely to happen is Mamdani wins. New York starts to suffer even more. A lot of wealthy people are going to flee the city. It's going to be sort of a self perpetuating cycle where things start to get worse in New York. And that the lesson that will be taken by the time we get to 2028 for the Democrats is socialism is not the answer. And we need to somehow tamp down the more radical portions of our base. And, the last thing I'll say is I think with this shutdown that you see going on right now, I don't think Chuck Schumer wants it at all. I think that what's happening is the same portion of the base that's willing to vote for someone like Mamdani is just basically like Trump bad and you must fight him at all cost. And so Schumer's like, okay, I got to look like I'm fighting, so we're going to be against this. And what's going to happen is it's not going to work out for them politically, in my opinion. So we'll see. I think that always never bet against the establishment when it comes to either the Republican or the Democratic Party. Trump's an outlier as far as I'm concerned because he has a lot going for him that most of these sort of people that would be the left wing version of him aren't going to have. So I think that inevitably the Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer wing will win out at the end of the day. But this is certainly illustrating a lot of problems that you have with the radical portions of the base. Yeah, I don't think it'll be like they're going to try to work together, right? But I think that the internal infighting, the seams are busting, and you're starting to see it. And I think that you're going to see that there's going to be like it'll be interesting. Is AOC going to run against Schumer? Is that something that she would eventually do? We'll see. So yeah, I think that the you see cracks fissure. The other thing is the great glue that holds that coalition together is Trump, right? Trump is the worst man in the world to them, right? And what happens if he's not there? Like 2028, what is the Democrat message at this point? What is the Democratic message other than like Trump's bad? That's it. Like I don't know what else they stand for. Do they stand for socialism? Do they stand for whatever Joe Biden stood for? That didn't seem to be very popular with the American people. So it's an interesting, but the other thing to say is, and I'll pull the reins on this. This is kind of a mealy mouthed answer, but this happens all the time. Anytime there's a big loss, like everyone's like, oh my gosh, that party is going to be fractured. That's what they said about Republicans after 2020. Now look, business as usual. Trump 2024, party's still MAGA. So, but I think that inevitably what this is sort of a flash in the pan with Mamdani, that the centrist base is going to try to redouble back on Orange Man bad, but try to like basically take out power in these primaries from the more progressive people because there's a political infighting right now for the heart of the Democratic Party. Is it going to become more identity politics, more socialist, or back to the more like sort of, well, the social issues, we've gone too far, we're going to rein it in a little, but we're still the same old corporatist Dems. So.
I was muted. I'm sorry. A lot of the things I kind of noticed on, you know, I think a lot of us have noticed it is the Democrats, their main like sticking point is, we hate Trump and we got to get him out of here. Trump is the big bad guy, but this is his second term. He can't run again. So when he's out, what are they going to do? Is it going to be some of Trump's friends bad now? It's Orange Man's friends bad. So is it
They're
going to be
already
more?
starting it.
What was
You
that?
already see them. You
Yeah.
already see them. You hear them out there like, well, JD Vance is even worse because he's more of a slick talker, but he's the same evil man. And I mean, the problem is, I don't like. There's this old movie Spinal Tap, that I liked, and like they joke about their amps go up to 11, and they're like, why don't you just turn it to 10, right? And he's like, because ours go to 11, like,
Yeah.
and it's 11. Everything is perpetual outrage now. Right? They can't be like, you know what? Trump did a couple good things, but here's where he goes wrong on his tax policy. It's like, this man is evil. He's like Germany in 1930. It's that evil. Oh my goodness. Everything he does, it's that evil. It's that evil. He's a threat to democracy. He's going to take us all out. And like, what do you do when the next guy comes, right? What do? You're like, well, this guy's sort of bad. Like, that's not going to work. Like, you've amped your base up so much. Once you've sort of, condition them to believe that way, how are you going to build enthusiasm unless you keep that momentum going? But the problem is, for a lot of people that they need in the center, it's over. Like, people are so tired of it. You could only have this outrage for so long, and it's just naturally peters out. And I'll give you a good example of this. There was, when you go back to 2020 and you see like all these riots that are occurring, Black Lives Matter or the Chaz Zone and all that stuff with Antifa, like there was like a feeling of like, well, if Trump sends in the National Guard, that would kind of be fascist. Like, we don't know. We don't know what to do. And there was like, most people were kind of like, we let it go. And BLM, you're right. And, all the cops are bad and whatever. And now it's like, I feel with the ICE riots and stuff, and it's like, oh, should we send the National Guard into LA when people were attacking ICE agents? I think most people are like, yeah, we're tired of the left. We're tired of every time something happens. Let's go loot stores. Let's go and take it to the streets. Let's go fight. We're over that. We're over it. And maybe even now they have more of a point from their perspective than they did back in 2020, but they've already used this maneuver. It's like we got a 4-year reprieve because Trump was out of power. Now it's right back to the same well. Perpetual outrage, violence in the streets, and we're over it. And so I think that they're shocked that most people are like, yeah, we don't care. We just don't care. We're tired of like this constant drumbeat of, Trump's this terrible fascist and, all of his supporters are these terrible, evil people. And it's like, I think that the people in the center, there's a lot of them that maybe even don't particularly like Trump that much. They're like, but the Democrats are nuts. Like the way they're billing it as like what Trump is this evil, uniquely horrible, like maniacal genius is just nonsensical. And I don't know how I don't know where the off ramp is. You see people like John Fetterman, who in my state of Pennsylvania, he's, as much as I hate to say it, he's been at least saying much more moderate things where he's like, listen, I refuse to believe that all these Trump voters are these evil, terrible people. That's nonsense. We shouldn't be talking like this. And the reaction people had to the murder of Charlie Kirk is disgusting. Like, we need to pull the reins back. This is out of control. Now, part of that is he happens to be pro-Israel for a Democrat. And in my state, again, of Pennsylvania, the governor, Josh Shapiro, who's a Democrat, his mansion got firebombed by a lefty who's a pro-Palestinian lefty. So I think that Fetterman sort of sees it like, yeah, man, like the knives are out. The Luigi Mangione thing, how many people on the left celebrated that guy killing a human being, killing United Healthcare CEO? The Charlie Kirk, how many people celebrated that? And I think someone who's more moderate like him, or some of these people that used to be Democrats, like, Tulsi Gabbard, or you have, I can't think of his name right now, but the former governor there in West Virginia, right, that's now like independent, they're coming out and they're like, whoa, it's getting crazy. And I don't know what happens. I don't know how the Democratic Party, how your Chuck Schumer's, your Nancy Pelosi, you're like, look, you guys are crazy over here. You guys are crazy. Yeah. It's too much. When they've spent 8 years saying Trump's basically that Austrian painter.
No, yeah.
And, what do you do? So
they're definitely it's a lot of damage control for sure, especially after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's one of those things that it's become apparent and very obvious to the average person who hasn't been radicalized, who's really kind of on that fence, more towards the Democrat side, but they're on that fence, to see the reactions that people had, especially on Twitter and in the news, and before they kind of like started to tie things up and really watch what they were going to say. They were kind of giving their real colors and true colors on some of a lot of those mainstream news sites, and they had to rein it in. A lot of these people who they were on the fence. They were more towards the Democrat. They're like, what is going on here? This is not the party that I want to belong to. This is not what I want to identify with. This is horrible. And I think that's majority of people. You know, I feel like we've been too conditioned to see what's on Twitter and what the posts are saying on their X and all the different social media platforms, and see what people are saying, and it just seems like everybody is this crazy, but it's truly not the case. And when you see what happened during the election of Donald Trump, and the amount of people who came out in support of him, and the true red wave we had there, it was kind of a sight to behold, to see. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are silent, but they're out there, you know, and we just got to be able to be the reasonable ones and understand that with time we'll get power and we'll be able to change things in a more meaningful way, like we've been doing with Trump here in this past year, this past election cycle that he's been having. But yeah, it's definitely there's going to be a lot of infighting, because some people are not going to want to give it up. You know, they're going to want to continue with the whole fascism, and this guy is the Austrian painter and whatnot. But you know, a lot of other people on that side are going to be like, no, we got to really, guys, we got to take it easy. You know, they're going to expose us here. You know, they're going to vote the other way. You know, so I definitely see that for sure.
And you see it, right, where it's like, one of the things the left saying is like, one of their incorrect diagnosis is, well, it's because the right has people like Joe Rogan. Well, the right has Joe Rogan for two reasons. One, because we were forced to create sort of our own unique media landscapes because we're basically shut out of traditional media. So, yeah, you have Fox News, but even them, like, they're not as pro-Trump as people would believe. But pretty much all the other games in town on TV are left-wing to rabid left-wing. And then even more importantly than that's your traditional, like, news media. So your New York Times, your Washington Post. Now, the truth is, most of your Fox News watchers are going to be Republican, and most of your MSNBC watchers are going to be Democrat. That's not the problem. The problem's CBS, NBC, ABC, the New York Times. These are considered more centrist. Now, this is where huge swaths of people are getting their information that aren't already ideologically captured, or they're only leaning one way or another. And it's overwhelmingly left-wing. It's overwhelmingly anti-Trump, right? So what happens? Well, we'll go to social media, right? And if you go back to 2016, there was this sort of, like, I've heard people call it like meme magic, right? Like, it's like all of these like right-wing creators are coming up. You had people like Stefan Molyneux and Sargon of Akkad, and Rebel News was out there, Gavin McInnes. You had all these people that are popping up, and all these memes and stuff that, like, there was this cultural moment where it pushed Trump to the forefront. So what happened? Well, there's a lot of censorship efforts of a lot of those big right-wing creators in online spaces after 2016, right? So then what happened? Well, you had a lot of people that found other ways, right? They're finding ways around it. Like, even still now, as better things have got, we have to use euphemisms like Austrian painter, because there's certain terms that you can't use because the way this is said. Perish the thought that me or you would even be remotely celebrating that guy.
Yeah.
And yet, the way it works is we can't say that word because it'll pick up on an algorithm. Yeah. You just learn this. You know this. You learn this as a streamer. It's like, okay, there's little things. So what happened was you had a lot of people create these new types of media, new spaces, and they're more right-wing because we had to. It's sort of like how you have to be innovative if you're in prison. Like, prisoners come up with all these crazy ideas for, like, entertainment or weapons or whatever, right? It's because when you're limited, you have to be clever. You have to be innovative. And so that's number one why we have someone like Joe Rogan. And the other reason we have someone like Joe Rogan is because he was a lefty. They say we need our own Joe Rogan. He was you. You guys have shifted the Overton window so much that traditional Democrats, like Donald Trump, by the way, are now considered far-right lunatics. And so when you shove everyone away from you that doesn't meet your insane ideological purity test, you find yourself in this weird position. So their diagnosis is like, we need our own Joe Rogan. No, you had him. You had people like Tulsi Gabbard. You had people like Glenn Greenwald. You had people like Jimmy Dore. And as soon as they questioned key insane policies you had, like lockdowns or mandates of this form or another, or, Donald Trump's the most evil person in the world, you were like, then you're evil. And so you're out of here too. And so those people all came together. There's still a lot of people in the center that voted for Donald Trump that don't like him. But they see him as less insane than the alternative.
The lesser evil. Yeah.
They keep doubling down on these 80-20 issues because that's where their vocal radical base is. Trans in sports, issues, open borders. They're going to keep doubling down on this stuff because they don't know how to escape the rabid base that they created. They gaslit this base into basically thinking This is the new civil rights movement. We are 1930s Germany. Now is the time. Now is the key time to stop this menace that's going to start a world war and exterminate all these people. You have to do it. And so it's hard to win an election in a primary with that, where you're like, hey, you know what? Actually, I think we should, let's have some robust social programs, but let's pull back on that crazy stuff. We've gone too far. It's not going to work. Then you're going to get cast aside too. So
Yeah.
it's sort of this death spiral, and the only thing keeping them afloat at this point is Donald Trump. And it's like, once he's gone, like, heaven forbid that someone would be elected, and I would not be for this, by the way, but let's assume that someone like, I don't know, run-of-the-mill Republican guy, like, let's assume that it would be like Chris Christie somehow wins the nominee in 2028. What are they going to run on?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what they would say. I mean, they're going to have to be like, well, he's worse than Donald Trump. And it's like, how? What are you going to say? And so what do they do? If they put someone up against that's like some radical lefty, they're just going to get smacked. And so I don't know. So they're already laying the groundwork. Ron DeSantis is the most evil man, and JD Vance is the most evil man, because that's it. That's going to be the strategy.
Yeah.
You know it. I know it. They know it. That's it. And they don't know until they find a way to sort of placate their more radical base. And Mamdani perfectly illustrates that. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely apparent with a lot of the people you were saying. Tulsi Gabbard used to be, or I guess she used to be on that side of the aisle for the most part. I mean, she still identifies herself as that, but she was more so in that way. And so was Joe Rogan, and so was JD Vance, for that matter, who's the vice president of the United States. Donald Trump's VP. He was also a never Trumper.
He was a right winger, but a never Trumper. But
yeah,
I mean, the people on the left. I mean, you look at the people. You get Tulsi, Joe Manchin's, who I was talking about. He's independent now. I mean, you look at people. I wouldn't be surprised.
Robert Kennedy, another one.
RFK. I wouldn't be surprised to see Fetterman leave the Democratic Party. It's like, one by one, these people, and that's just the politicians. How many people like Joe Rogan are out there? There were lifelong Democrats that are like, I don't know what to do. And he sees it. They attacked him like they attacked Trump. You remember CNN? Because he was like, hey, I'm taking ivermectin, right? And by the way, I'm never giving medical advice or telling you what to take or what not to take for any disease, let alone COVID. But Joe Rogan was out there, was like, this is what I've done, and I think it benefited me. Remember, they took the video of him and they turned the hue yellow so he looked sickly?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Rogan lived through that. And so it's like, what are you going to tell that guy, right? Like, well, still, you should be a Democrat and all this crazy stuff and blah, 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 after we treated you like this. So it's going to take a radical change. I think that they're going to try, and then here's another question. They played the identity politics game. Who are you going to put up in 2028? You heard Kamala Harris say she couldn't pick Pete Buttigieg to be her VP. Why? Because he's gay. The black community don't like that. Okay. So then who are you going to put? On one hand, it's like someone like Andy Bashir, probably out there that could be more of a moderate voice and appeal to some of the traditional Democrats that aren't as radical. On the other hand, he's a white man. And you're going to have an awful lot of people that are like, a white man, he's not a socialist. Maybe he's too favorable to Israel. So I don't know. You're going to see a lot of infighting. And that's not to say, when there's this much power and this much money at stake, anything could happen and they could get it all together before the 2028 election and come build a coalition again and be very successful. I'm not predicting the end of the Democratic Party, but it is going to be fractured. And it's going to be interesting to see how they build a coalition, particularly once Trump's gone.
Yeah, I think you illustrated that point very well with saying how there was a lot of people who voted for Trump just because he was the lesser of the two evils, for sure. And it's a sight to behold, the adaptation, the ability to adapt that the Republican Party has, that the conservatives have. The Democrats have always been kind of old school in the social media, or I guess the media sense, where they went with that old school mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, New York Times kind of route, where in my opinion at least, the social medias are the ones that really do move the needle and really move it in a significant way. The Republicans figured this out, the conservatives figured this out, and in my opinion, that's kind of what really turned the tide in the 2024 election to Trump's way. And I think even 2016, because whether we like it or not, the elections are very much a popularity contest, for the most part. If you're a popular candidate and people talk about your household name, you're gonna get voted for. And Trump was that guy. In 2016, he was a very very blunt guy. He said what he thought. He didn't really hold nothing back. Controversial, but people like that. People wanted something different, and they got him, and they voted for him. And in 2024, they did the same thing. We had Joe Rogan on our side, a very big push. So there was a lot of social media that was kind of pushing Trump towards the finish line there. And the Democrats never really caught on to that. They kind of stuck with the old school media. The old school mainstream media, CNN, New York Times stuff, but it didn't seem to work, and it seems like they're still putting money into that. They're still putting effort into that. They don't learn in that way.
And it's weird because I think that the more radical portion of the Democratic base understands like the changing media landscape. So say what we will about AOC. AOC understands like an online crowd. She goes live on Instagram. She's going to have tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people watching.
Yeah.
She gets that, right? Now, the problem is that sort of politics that they're pushing and the message they're pushing are probably not palpable to the majority of the country, right? But they understand the media landscape. And Trump, that's what Trump represented, right? Trump had two things going for him. One is an absolute incredible mastery of being able to suck all the oxygen out of the room. Like, he is insanely charismatic. Like him or hate him, every eye's on the dude, right? And everything he says is a news story, and people can't get enough. That's Trump, right? And so if you're running against him in a primary, like, even if you're like, well, I actually have a bunch of policy proposals that I think would be better, dude, that, like you said, elections largely are a popularity contest. You just don't have the charisma. You can't compete with this guy who's sucking all the oxygen out of the room, like him or hate him. The other thing was, I think he tapped into something, which was that people were fed up with traditional institutions. And so it's the same true on the left. The reason that there's such a momentum for people like Bernie Sanders or AOC is people rightfully are saying that the system from a left-wing perspective hasn't addressed their concerns. That was certainly the case on the right. Before you had Trump, you had like Ron Paul, you had the Tea Party, right? These are people that were disaffected and, said basically we're blaming the establishment. So Trump came along, and despite being this billionaire, he's seen as, in my neck of the woods, like people that never voted were like, the bar is so low that here was a guy that seemed unabashedly pro-America, that looked at people in like rural areas and blue collar workers and just average Americans, was like, you know what? I respect you. You guys are good. You're not the problem. You're not the villain. So much of like the Obama legacy was like, well, America's the bad guy. We're bad. We should be ashamed. We have original slavery and how we treated the Indians. And here's what we did in Iraq. And here's what we did here. And here's what we did here. Meanwhile, he keeps up the disastrous foreign policy, the bombings and all of that stuff. But that was the narrative. And here comes Trump. It's like, nah, we're the greatest. You're the greatest. Thank you, hard worker. It doesn't even matter if he's telling the truth or not. The bar is so low, just having a president be like, yes, I respect you guys. There were people I knew in my life that never said a word about politics, that would crawl over broken glass to vote for him every election they could, because to them, he is the first major candidate that ever talked to them or talked positively about them in a way that they believed. And so that organic energy, there is some of that on the left, but the problem is the message isn't one that the majority of Americans want to hear. And, when you see the energy is with, Mamdani's a great speaker. He is. He captures an audience. He knows how to keep hammering home the points he wants. The problem is, I think that his policies are going to be far too extreme for the majority of Americans. So can that momentum keep up if you have another person at a national level? And then to the extent where you have people that maybe have captured people's attention, like Bernie. I mean, it's Bernie. He's getting old. He doesn't really have a charisma of someone like Trump. It really is. It's a mess, because I do sympathize with the more radical left-wingers. I despise their sort of political prescriptions, but I understand the feeling that, like, listen, the system hasn't delivered to us as promised. We vote for Democrats because we expect something, but if I look at the presidency of Barack Obama after the presidency of George W. Bush on an issue such as foreign policy, I have a hard time differentiating what was different. Or maybe I'm a lefty and I was furious in the 2008 financial crisis. And so we blame Bush and we blame Cheney, and then we elect this cool, hip black guy, first black president, Barack Obama. He's going to get those bankers, and he gave this famous speech. where he talked to the bankers and said, I'm the last thing that stands between you and the pitchforks. Sold him out. The progressives right out of the gate. It's like, yep. Nope. It's business as usual, my friends. Same old Republican and Democratic Party from now until the end of time. We'll be sitting here and, our great-great-grandkids will be sitting here in 2100 and it'll be like Jeb Bush's great-great-granddaughter versus Hillary Clinton's great-great-granddaughter. Yeah, from now until the end of time, Bush versus Clinton, Bush versus Clinton. Well, someone like Trump, or to a lesser extent, someone like Bernie Sanders or an AOC, they upset that apple cart. And I understand why people want that. I just happen to think the ones on the left are crazy. That's in my opinion. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think there's definitely, like what you were saying before, there's definitely going to be a lot of infighting towards this next election cycle for sure. But we have some time up until then. But just to move it on to the next Reddit post here, we're going to go to Change My View. Republicans are seemingly becoming more racist and bigoted since Trump's re-election. Since Trump got re-elected, it feels like some parts of the Republican Party have gotten a lot more openly racist and hateful. Leaked chats from young Republicans showed people using disgusting slurs against black and Jewish people. One of Trump's nominees, Paul Ingrassia, even said that the MLK Jr. holiday belongs in hell and joked about having a Schnazi streak. Some Republicans have attacked Zoran Mamdani, I always mess up his last name, because of their race or religion, calling him a terrorist and saying that he should be deported from the U.S. Some Republicans have been targeting Vivek Ramaswamy and even J.D. Vance's wife because of their Indian background. They also lost their minds over Kash Patel celebrating Diwali's, while he's totally fine with white politicians celebrating St. Patrick's Day or Columbus Day. It really seems like a lot of the hate that used to stay quiet is now coming out in the open, even towards people who aren't white or Christian.
Yeah, that's true and a good thing. And I'll explain why. It's not that I'm racist. What it is things that every other group. So I believe that the left has basically adapted what I call cultural Marxism. Marxism says there are the oppressed and the oppressors. It's just doing it through an economic lens. You have the proletariat that are oppressors and the bourgeoisie that are oppressed. What happens if you split people up on infinite categories based on that? So pick one. Race, white people oppressors, other groups oppressed. Religion, Christian oppressors, the rest oppressed. And on and on. Straight people, oppressors. Gays or LGBT, oppressed. Men, oppressors. Women, oppressed. What happened was, when it comes to the issue of race, you could openly denigrate white people. There are college courses talking about the evil of whiteness. I was involved in the debate community from the years of like 2003 to often, as a debater and then later as a coach and a judge till probably 2013 or so. It was quite common to hear about the evils of whiteness, celebrating when there were less percentage of white people in the community. We celebrate, we say it's a good thing. The entire nation says it's a good thing when, by the year 2058, white people will no longer be the majority. Oh, that's great. That's great. And what happened is Trump did help change the Overton window where people were like, you know what? If people are noticing, if I'm white, I don't give a shit about being white, but I do give a shit if other people say, you're white, we hate you. Now I care. Right? And when I see that, I say, you know what? It's okay for me to be white. That's okay. It's all right for me. And it's all right for me to say, I don't think it's a good thing to see people that share my ancestry losing the majority in this country. I don't think that's a good thing. And it's okay for me to say, I like when people speak my language, English. And I think it's a problem when people don't. And it's okay for me as a Christian to say, I want people that share my religion to be in positions of power in this country. And I don't want to import people from religions that I think are antithetical to what I believe. Now, it's certainly no one bat an eye if a black Muslim says, I want more black Muslims in positions of power. They would say, great, amazing, that's great. That's your cultural heritage. Way to support the whole movement, support black-owned businesses. What do you think would happen if a prominent right-winger was like, I want to support white-owned businesses? They'd get drummed out of polite society. And so the problem is, this game's been played for so long on so much of the left, and Trump was sort of, the way Trump talks, forget about race, Trump speaks in a way that lets the average person know, you know what, I could talk like that. And so when Trump comes out and he says, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, when he's talking about Israel, you don't hear presidents talk like that. And it's really shifted the Overton window. Right? Because when you get called a racist for everything, it loses power. And so they've called Trump every name in the book, and he still won. And people are like, yeah, you know what? Then I don't have to worry about it. Now, it could obviously go too far, and that, of course, I'm not sitting here advocating for a white-only nation or anything of that degree. But the problem is, right, the idea that when you have one group that will say all this stuff and they'll be racist and bigoted and hateful to the groups they don't like, and when the other group finally says, you know what, I've had enough, we're going to collectivize, they say, oh my gosh, that's so worrying. That's worrying. Now they're saying they're proud of being white. They're saying that they want people to speak English. They don't want Muslims in positions of power. Oh my goodness, this is so frightening. You people have denigrated Christians in positions of power for years, my entire adult life. So yeah, in a sense, I wouldn't frame the question the same way, but I do agree with the idea that people are now more open, saying, yeah, I'm unabashedly pro-Christian. I don't want non-Christians coming here in scores. Yes, I'm white. I want people that look like me to associate with me and be in positions of power. Yep. Yes, I want people that come from countries that are culturally similar to me and my ancestors to come here. I don't want people from Somalia, where all of a sudden we have problems in this country like female genital mutilation. I was happy when the United States didn't have that as a problem. That was a good thing, So I just reject this framing of like, oh my goodness, it's so sad you guys. They called Charlie Kirk a racist. How'd that end up, right? Sydney Sweeney said that she was, that 1930s German party. Why? Because she was a white lady that wore jeans. Oh my goodness, that reminds us of that 1930s German party. So yes, the people that believe that are going to clutch their pearls when they go, oh my gosh, there were some young Republican guys that were telling some edgy jokes that I find racially offensive. The difference is this, the way it's always been is, sure, you scratch the surface and you can find out that people talk like this. Newsflash, when I'm hanging around with like friends of mine that are black or Hispanic or whatever, we're telling all kinds of offensive jokes at each other's expense all the time. That's what we're doing. Yeah, you don't say it in public. My black friends could go out and tell their jokes in public with no form of losing their job, but I can't say anything like that in public or I will lose my job, both as a white person, as a Christian, as a man, and as a conservative. I'm an oppressor, 4 for 4, baby. And I have to, I have to worry about losing my job when I was doing other lines of work with that. But they don't. Those people don't. And by the way, good for my friends. I don't care. Good for them.
Yeah.
Take advantage. I don't mind. But what happened was, while you're worried that if we scratch the surface, we could find offensive things when it comes to Republicans, the Democrats are saying it out loud. Who's this Redditor? Were they missing the tens of thousands of people on Reddit and other platforms celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk? But no, they're going to be more offensive because, oh my goodness, will you believe this? Some young Republicans, they said some things about, the gas chambers in Germany, and oh my goodness, I just don't know where we are as a country. Meanwhile, I'll be voting for the Attorney General in Virginia that said that he wants his political opponents' children to die. So I'm sorry, your criticisms mean nothing to me. I've seen who you people are, by and large, and the things that you're willing to put up with or support when it comes to your side. So please, spare me your fake moral outrage when it comes to, oh my goodness, white people are starting to talk about white issues. I don't give a shit. That's my response,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think a lot of what the United States has been is over time is losing its identity. We have an identity, and a lot of people think we don't because, we're a country of immigrants. We hear that said all the time. But this country has an identity. We're a Christian nation at its roots. We're a Christian nation who have people here who immigrated from Europe, white European countries that populated this land, so we have an identity, and I feel like people right now are starting to get sick and tired of this identity being trampled on, and we're seeing more and more people move towards that, trying to really break into and open that and make it more mainstream rather than kind of what we've been seeing with the immigration and Islam infiltrating a lot of societies in the West, not only the United States, but also we've seen it in a lot of European countries. People want to have the identity that the United States has always had. We're patriotic. What happened in 2011 or 2001, sorry, when that thing happened, we all came together under the red, white, and blue. And now what are we seeing now? People waving the flags of Somalia, waving the flags of Mexico, waving the flags of Palestine, and where are the American flags at? Where are all the American flags? Where are the patriots at? We don't see them anywhere.
You saw the ICE raids. One of the things that the Democrats are trying to rein in, right? This is how you can tell a lot of the no kings and stuff's astroturf. when they started doing the ICE attacks in LA there, right, in Trump's second term, they're all flying the Mexican flag. And you
Yeah.
could tell someone that's sponsoring them is like, don't do that. That's a bad look. Fly the American flag. It's not, oh, okay, okay. Right. But it's like I was reading polling the other day. In 1990, I believe it was, 91% of Republicans said they were proud to be American and 89% of Democrats. Today, that number is 93% of Republicans are proud to be American and 35% of Democrats. Less than half of Democrats say they're proud to be an American. And so, it really goes to illustrate your point. Or another thing, Mamdani, right? Mamdani was taking pictures and campaigning with an unindicted co-conspirator of the, what was it, 93 World Trade Center attack. Not the one that brought down the towers. There was a bombing. Many people don't know this, in 93. And this guy was one of the unindicted co-conspirators that helped defend the people that were charged with the bombing, etc. And so I saw someone say, how could it be in New York of all places after what happened in September 2001? How could it be that they would go with someone that tragedy, those buildings falling, that, not 10 years prior to that was involved in an attempted bombing of those buildings, and someone's campaigning with that guy? And the truth is, you want to know what the answer is? They're not. Like, most native-born New Yorkers that were there, they're not voting Mamdani. It's that foreign-born New Yorkers are voting Mamdani. What's their connection to that day? What do they care? They didn't lose anyone that day. They weren't even here. They don't care. That's the problem. We're importing a bunch of people that don't share our values. So don't be surprised when they vote for people who also don't share our values and go, how did that happen? How did the political landscape change so much? You brought in mass amounts of people that don't share your cultural values. If you go back and you look at all metrics about race relations in this country, things reached a high water mark like basically 2005, 2006. They started to downturn during Obama. That's what happened. Because it turns out when you make everything about racial grievance, people start to notice. And I've debated these white nationalists, right? So one of the most famous ones was this guy, Richard Spencer. I've debated him. And Spencer, I saw an interview with him in I don't know when this would have been, 2016, 2017, around then. And probably actually after that. It was probably like 2018, 2019. I saw this interview and he was like, why is there such a growing people listening to you? It's like white nationalists. What's driving your numbers up? You want to know what he said? Black Lives Matter. Because it turns out when one side plays the racial collectivist game, inevitably what happens is the other side plays. And if you want to run an experiment, run this. I happen to be a white guy. Now, I'm not racist. I'm not looking to just hang out. I don't mind. I'm happy to be white. I love white people, right? But I'm not exclusive to that. I'll be friends with the black guy, no problem. I'd rather be concerned with people that think like me and share my values than people that look like me. I could name you a lot of white people that I don't really care for. But if I go to prison and I'm like, I'm not interested in joining a white gang, and all of a sudden I get beat up every day by people of color, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to join that white gang because I'm tired of getting beat up. And that gang's at least like, you know what? We'll take you. We'll protect you. And that's what happens. When you keep telling white people they're the problem, they're sinful, they owe everyone something, eventually they say, you know what? Then we're going to come together and defend ourselves. And so that's the issue. The real issue is race relations were getting better in this country. And white people still, overwhelmingly, are more respectful and see less color, at least on all reporting polls. I saw this poll they did where it was charting 4 races. Whites, or I don't know if race is the right word, but whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. And what it did was it had them rate each race. So I'm a white guy. They would say, rate your general feelings in general to average people of white ethnicity. Now black ethnicity, now Hispanic, now Asian. Now every group rated their own group the highest. Makes sense. Blacks thought blacks were the best. By the way, no problem with that. Asians thought Asians, Hispanics, whites. But with white people, it's almost a straight line. They view almost every race within 1 or 2 points of each other, right? Every other race had whites way at the bottom. Way at the bottom. Blacks had whites way at the bottom. Asians, whites, way at the bottom. Hispanics, whites, way at the bottom. And it turns out, when you push this cultural message for year after year after year that whites are evil and they're on stolen land and they have original sin, and a lot of what they say is rooted in truth, but the problem is so does every other race. Every race. In fact, the noble Native Americans before we came here in places like, Mexico that were sacrificing children. or horrible atrocities that one Native American tribe in the States were committing to another, etc., or blacks themselves that were loading people on the slave ships, right, to sell, where you had white, Europeans and Jewish people that were purchasing these slaves, or, need I mention what the Hispanics were up to, right? As they were, that's the world is brutal. The history of the world is brutal. Let any race or ethnicity that hasn't committed some sin in their ancestral background throw the first stone. And yet, all we do is talk about the sins of the European settled, right? Of the people of European background. Why? Why is that? And when you do it over and over, people are going to say, you know what? I never cared before, but now I care. Now that you're going to make it a point, okay, I care. And that's what's happening. And, so when I talk to the white nationalists or something like this, I have a better chance of at least reaching them to some degree than some lefty, because the lefty is just like, you're repugnant, you're a racist. I'm able to look at them and go, you're right, you make a lot of solid points. I disagree with what you think we should do about it. That's where the disagreement comes. But you're right. I know what it feels like to have people as a culture look at you and say, you're evil, you're terrible. I know it. And so, there's a reason why Elizabeth Warren was checking a box that she's Native American to get into college campuses. If we have all this white privilege, then why would you ever pretend not to be white? It's because we all know, deep down, we all know that it's easy to denigrate white people. It's acceptable to do so. And, this Redditor is perhaps naive, but most likely part of the problem, that had no problem, never spoke up and was like, geez, I was on college campus today and I noticed that I could take courses on the evil of whiteness. That seems to be a bit problematic. No evils of blackness or evils of Asianness. That didn't come up. But, so, yeah, I think you can tell I sort of get fired up over sort of these points, because I'm so tired of the racism trope. It's like, yeah, shut your mouth. Make a solid point. You're not going to shame me by calling me racist anymore. I know what's in my heart, and I see what you call racist, which is everything, so the word loses all power at this point.
No, yeah, you create the enemies when you villainize the people who are gonna have to be voting for you. Like majority of the population in this country are white people. When you call them racist, when you call them bigots, when you call them fascists, when you call them schnazis and everything, they're gonna want to get away from you. It's the same thing with gender dynamics today. Women are oppressed. Women are absolutely inferior in society, and we should have equality amongst the sexes. We're the oppressed class. Well, then who's the oppressor, right? It has to be men. It necessarily would have to be men. And when men are always called the oppressors, we're always oppressing women, we're always the misogynist, we're always bad people, we're all the villains always. We're gonna stop caring about the chivalry of gender dynamics. We're gonna stop caring about worrying about what's if you're okay, if you need any help, if everything is going fine. We're gonna stop caring about that, and then they complain about it, and we see how that turns out in society. 100%.
Totally agree. Yep.
Yeah, that's
same. And you could do this. By the way, you could do this game with Christianity. You could do the same with straightness. You could do the same, right? Like, and it's eventually how the worm eventually turns. Look at the feminists. The same tactics that the feminists employed of the shaming, the just claiming their opponents are bigots and all of this stuff, now is employed against them by the trans community. They're called TERFs. If they, right?
Yeah.
Their claim was, you're born bad because you're a man, and, yay, women. And the trans people are like, you're right, and we're women. And they're like, wait, no, you're not a woman. Yes, we are. And now you're the bigot. And they're like, wait. I think it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Because that's the truth. Once you play this oppressor versus oppressed game, let's say hypothetically, we'll do it in the most benign way possible. Let's say in 3 generations, you've somehow shamed white people to the point where they no longer procreate. And white people just fizzle out. You think that's the end of it? You think all of a sudden they'll say, finally, the oppressors are gone? Of course not. The very next thing that's going to happen is the black community and the Hispanic community is going to start blaming each other. Or it's going to be the Asian community. Wait a minute, they're still testing higher. Why do they have good jobs? Why aren't they in prison as much? It's never going to end. And even if you got it down to one, quote, ethnicity, well, then you would say, like, all you need to do is go look at, like, so many areas around the world. One of my favorite jokes, I forget the comedian that told it, it's like, He's like, you always hear about how racist the United States is. He's like, I don't think so. He's like, dude, where I come from, he's like, you'll have two people that look like identical twins, and it's like, what? You're from the east side of town? I hate you and your entire ancestry. Yeah. It's like everyone outside's like, you guys look identical. Like, what are you talking about? I hate their race, and that's the truth. It'll never end, and yet they're too dumb to see it. Or it's not even that. It's that they get this, they get it in their head that the narrative is so simple. It's oppressors versus oppressors. Here's the dirty truth that no one wants to talk about. In all these categories, like, here's the truth. It is true that there's white privilege, but it's also true that it's a detriment to be white. And it's true that it's a detriment to be black. And there's also black privilege. And the same's true of every race and of every gender and of every sexual orientation and of every height and of every, attractiveness. Now, it's true. Sometimes there's more advantages depending on the location, the timing, whatever, to being one. But, you'd be like, how is it, being attractive? Of course being attractive would be a huge benefit. You're right, overwhelmingly is. But there's downsides, right? Like, you look like me, I don't have to worry that someone's hiring me because, just eye candy. But if you're a 10 out of 10 bombshell chick, maybe so. And you're like, no, I actually want to get hired for my work. All of these things, and it's oversimplified. Here's the truth. If you're born in the United States today, you're relatively healthy, you weren't born with some debilitative disease, and you had two parents that gave a shit, you're amongst the 99.996 most lucky people in the history of the world. That's where you're at. And what we see when we have, a black person go, white privilege, what they're arguing is, I'm 99.99995% privileged, and those people are 99.9996 privileged, and that pisses me off. I want that privilege. And they're not even right about that, by the way, but that's the claim that they're making in effect. And it's like, how does this benefit you? Do you think this helps you in the long run, instead of just saying, you think that there aren't, and, there aren't situations where it's detrimental to me to be white? I've lost debate rounds where the judge admitted to me, you actually won the argument, but because you're white and you're arguing for the advancement of black people in the game of debate, and your opponent happens to be black, I'm sure you won't mind if I vote for him. Now, that's a little thing in life, but nonetheless, it's like, I'm so over this. I'm so over this, sort of grievance politics. And what you've done is you've created legitimate anger from the people of these groups that you call oppressors. How long do you think Christians are going to let you tell them, you're the problem, you're evil, and we're all good? Or white people, you're evil and we're all good. Or men, you're evil and we're good. And all of these groups, eventually those groups are going to say, you know what, we're going to play that game too. And actually, we got a lot of grievances about the stuff you do. Men, people that talk about men's issues, they're laughed out of the room. And yet they have, for me as a father, probably the most important thing to my life, in fact, easily the most important thing to my life is my son. Heaven forbid that something would ever happen to me and my wife would split. The chances of me getting custody of my son are almost minimal. And yet that's the most important thing to me in life. That privilege to be guaranteed custody or to get it 80% of the time would be more important than any other supposed male privilege that I have. And yet, when you talk about this, it's just shrug. So what? Suck it up. Go get a second job. Send that child support payment to your wife. And a litany of other issues like that. So if we're going to start as a society saying, and I don't have a problem with this, if we're going to say it's okay for groups to collectivize and talk about the grievances they have, fine, but then it's okay for all groups. It's not okay for just some. And if it's okay for some groups to joke around and make insults to the other groups, then it's okay for all groups to do that. That's it. And so when I don't want to hear we're the party of making fun of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, and we're the party of making fun of white people, and I could give you example after example of the derogatory things they've said. Nick Cannon, some of the things he said when he's doing whatever it was, America Got Talent, whatever garbage show he was on.
Yeah.
Things he's saying, it'd make a Klansman blush how racist he's being against white people. And yet there he is. No consequences to be paid. Who cares? Suck it up, white people. And you're right. White people should just suck it up. But please, spare us when Sam Hyde's out there saying stuff and you're clutching your pearls. I don't give a shit. Sam's funny. Kiss my ass. That's my feeling on it. So it's one of the most aggravating things in the world. And by the way, if you're listening and you're a person of color, I say this with no animosity to you. Go ahead and make anti-white jokes. Make anti-black jokes, anti-Hispanic. Have fun, man. Go to town. I don't care. Collectivize amongst your group. Talk about the grievances your group has. Totally cool. Don't mind it whatsoever. Just understand that everyone's going to do the same thing. And that's perfectly acceptable. That's all.
No, 100%. I completely agree. And I think that we see it too, the differences between the values of each side, where when you when you create a villain, a villainous side or a villainous group, in this case, black people towards white people, where the white people are the bad ones, white people are the villains, they're the oppressors, and we see what happens when they don't get their way. They're not able to defeat you with the racial remarks and the racism and the bigotry and the name calling and the identity politics. They're not able to beat you there. So what do? They kill you instead, like what happened with
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk. And when they do it to us, what do? Church attendance went up. I saw that post. I saw someone post about that. Church attendance skyrocketed after Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Yep.
That's what we respond with. That's our form of attacking back. That's our form of defending ourselves, is giving our lives closer to Jesus Christ. That's what we do. What does the left do when they feel cornered, when they feel attacked? They kill us. They kill our people. They threaten our lives. They wish harm upon us and our children. That's what they do. And we've seen the true colors of them after what's been happening recently, all these different instances of political violence. We've seen it like left and right. We keep seeing it, and we saw it with Donald Trump. Although he didn't get actually murdered that time. So to a certain degree, we kind of shrugged it off a little bit. We were like, you know what, it's just a crazy person. But then with Charlie Kirk, I think we finally woke up as a side, as the conservatives. We finally woke up to who, the true colors of the left, 100%.
I mean, you go back to Luigi Mangione. I mean, you could certainly go back even before that. I mean, the assassination attempt to Trump, but with Luigi, I mean, it was so ubiquitous that so many people on the left celebrated him. You had like comedians that I like my whole life, like Bill Burr, that are joking but not really joking, going on late night comedy shows like "Free Luigi," yeah, healthcare's a mess, ah, the heck with that guy. And it's like, I remember there were right wingers that were like, well, and I was like, don't you see the game? Right? As soon as you're like, I don't know, maybe there's a point here. Dude, trust me, if you're a Trump voter, whatever they thought of that United Healthcare CEO, they think 10 times worse of you.
Yeah.
Right? And now we see Charlie Kirk, and it's not going to stop. By the way, like when you truly think that your opponents are evil, then everything's on the table. It wasn't Charlie Kirk's extreme position that led to them assassinating him. It was his effectiveness. That's it. That's the only limiting.
Yeah,
principle.
he's like generally a moderate in the space for the most part. Like I think to myself and my own views and how they contrast with Charlie's. And if they want him dead, I'm kind of scared to see what they want for me, because a lot of my views are a lot more extreme than his. And he was generally considered a moderate. But like you said, it's his effectiveness. It's the way he was able to transcribe that message that really got him shot at the end. But he was generally considered a moderate. And look at the level of hatred that he received by the opposing side. It's definitely something to behold for sure.
I do a lot of online debates. I debated in college, then I was a debate coach. Now I do a lot of online debates. To me, one of the most stunning images that came after the Charlie Kirk assassination was him debating this guy at Oxford named George Abernier, something like that. And this guy George had became the elected incoming president of the Oxford Speech and Debate Club, which is one of the most prestigious like debate clubs in the world. And there's an image of them like pointing at each other, debating, standing there. And you imagine how that would have went. They had a civil debate. It's Oxford after all. Probably exchanged pleasantries, but hey, how you doing? Thanks for coming, man. It's good to see you. Hey, wish you well. Afterwards, probably like, thanks so much for that. Have a good one. Whatever. As soon as Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, here's George Abernier immediately taking to social media to celebrate it. And they looked at each other in the eyes. They debated each other. They shook hands. And that guy, while he's debating Charlie's like, if someone killed you, I'd celebrate.
Yeah.
And so I have to ask myself, how many times have I debated some left winger that, hey, good to be here, man. Thanks for doing the debate. Can't wait to get started. How long are we going here tonight? That behind those eyes were thinking, I hope you die. I hope someone takes you out, right? And it's insane to me because for me, I don't have that level of anger for any of them. For me, like the worst of the worst that I've debated, I'm not even wanting them to lose their channel. I'm just like, I hope you come to your senses. I hope people don't listen to you with your crazy, terrible opinions. I hope that you don't suffer maybe at the worst, may you be held to the same standard that you seek to hold others to. But never would I be celebrating their murder or wishing something like that upon them. And yet, this seems to be more commonplace than not amongst many of these people on these spaces that want to pontificate on social media from a left-wing perspective. And it's truly revolting. I ran for Congress. My campaign manager is a lifelong Democrat. And during the pandemic, I remember talking to him. He's a centrist lefty, right? And he's always more, I might be prone to hyperbole from time to time, right? And I remember talking to him. Reddit had this page called the Herman Cain Awards. Herman Cain was this Republican, Trump supporter, black man who died of COVID. And he famously had pictures of him at a rally before his death where he wasn't wearing a mask. And so, of course, the COVIDians were like, oh, that's why he's dead. Never mind the fact that the mask was never to prevent you, according to them, from getting COVID. It was to prevent you from giving it to others. So the idea, oh, he deserved to get COVID and die because he wasn't wearing a mask. So they created the Herman Cain Awards. And I was talking to my buddy and I said, you know, I think that it's like 15 to 20% of Democrats truly want me to die if I don't agree with them on COVID. And my centrist Democrat friend was like, oh, it's way higher than that. It's way higher than that. And I mean, to hear that from him shocked me. And he's not wrong, though. He's absolutely wrong. In fact, polling suggests 28% of Democrats polled, and I believe a YouGov poll said that if you didn't take the vaccine, the government should take your children from you. And you're like, how can this be? How can it be that of a party of roughly 75 million people, that 30% think if I didn't take, so we're talking, I don't know, let's do some quick math. 30% of 70-something odd million. We talking what, like 20 million people? Think that if I didn't take the medication they want, I shouldn't be allowed to have my son in my home? And then you see, you know, the polling suggests like 55% or something like that of Democrats polled said they could at least somewhat justify the murder of Donald Trump. 48% said it about Elon Musk. The polling it's unquestionable, and it matches the anecdotal evidence you see. These Democrats, it is no longer becoming a fringe 1 or 2% issue that will celebrate or cheer on violence against their opponents. It's becoming mainstream. And I don't know where we go from here. My solution is you hope that enough people in the center are like, this is out of control. Like, we have to reject this in our culture and at the ballot box. And other than that, I balkanize. Go to church, meet like-minded people, create your own communities, get these people out of your lives. If they cheered on the murder of Charlie Kirk, they would cheer on your murder. And you want those people out of your life as much as possible. You don't want them teaching your kids. You don't want them being your nurse. You don't want them counting your cash at the bank when you go. Get them out of your life as best as possible. Don't purchase products that these people work at. Don't shop at stores that these people work at. I don't know what else to say. It's at least a good first step. And you hope that the culture comes to its senses and is like, we reject this wholeheartedly. But I don't know. You know, there's nothing guaranteed in life. I'm willing to bet that I think that the average person is eventually going to be like, this is insane. But they continue to gaslight and act like they're not the problem and equivocate. You know, the mainstream media is more concerned with what some young Republicans said and, you know, joking around in a group chat. Somehow that justifies the tens of thousands of things we heard all these people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder that they refuse to talk about, let alone politicians like the dude that's running for Attorney General of Virginia, wishing death upon his opponent's children. They don't seem to care. They're like, whatever. 2 or 3 Democrats made a joke about that Austrian painter one time in a private text message. So, tomato, tomato. Charlie Kirk had to have armed security everywhere he went, professional armed security, every time he went in college campuses. When you have cheap left-wingers like this guy Destiny that goes on campuses trying to do the same thing from a left perspective, his security's his 120-pound left-wing lady friend. That's their security, right? And it just goes into, we all know the truth. We know it. And yet over and over and over, I debate these people and they ignore reality. Oh no, the right's far more violence. Really? Show me the right-wing political riots. Well, January 6th, okay. Next. You want me to name left-wing political riots? Okay, let's go back to 2020. Portland Day 1, Portland Day 2, Portland Day 3, Portland Day 4, and then I could go up to like Portland Day 76, Portland Day 77. That's one city. And it happened all across this country. Maybe not as bad as Portland, but you get the point. We all know it. They boarded up their businesses, right, on election night in 2020, not because they were afraid if Trump lost, that Trump voters would riot and loot their businesses, but because they knew that if Trump won, that's what the Democrats would do. And it's so ridiculous that we have to sit here and just, well, actually, though, the people that compile the statistics say that right-wing violence is, I had this debate not 2 nights ago, right? Our studies show that the right wing commits more violence and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, really? Let's go back to 2020. What does your data suggest? How many left-wing acts of violence were there in 2020? Well, I don't know why that matters, because I purposely witnessed hundreds of Black Lives Matter riots. So did it take those into account? I'm not going to do that. I'm not getting into this. Right. When the people that compile the data tell you not to believe your lying eyes, and then they cite the data and say, see, the data says what it says. The data said, the scientists said that the virus could have came from a lab in Wuhan. So there it is. That's the end of the debate. Right? It's so overwhelming to talk to these people that gaslight you like this. It's incredibly demoralizing, not as a debater, not even as a right-winger, as a human. It's just like it's depressing. It's depressing that, like, you could see something, it's the old SpongeBob meme. You know, is this your wallet? No. Is this your ID? Yeah. And your ID was in this wallet? Yeah. And this fell out of your pants? Yeah. So then it's your wallet? No. Like, that's what it is. That's what it's like to talk to these people. And, like, they'll sit there with a straight face and tell you, like, no, we're not violent. What are you talking about? It's like, dude, you're celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk. Yeah, well, yeah, but he's one of those 1930 German. No, he's clearly not. Yes, of course he is. And it's like, yeah, but then you think I am too. Yeah, maybe. So then it's okay to murder me. Well, it's not murder because you have it coming. Okay. Like, that's really where we're at. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely I definitely agree with what you're saying there. It's the level of political violence that has become kind of the norm for the left today. To be honest with you, I never really thought we would get there, but we're here now, you know. So, but to move on to the final post in the Reddit section of the show here, it's going to be coming from Change My View. The U.S. should make voting mandatory with a small fee or with a small fine of $20 for not voting, like Australia does. Australia's had compulsory voting since 1924, and it's worked well. Turnout is around 90%. Elections better reflect the will of the people, and campaigns focus more on issues that turn out games. Then turnout games. If you don't want to pick a candidate, you can still submit a blank or spoiled ballot. The point isn't to force belief, it's to make participation the default. Just showing up is the civic act. I think of it like jury duty, not something you do for fun, but something you do because you care about your country and fairness. A small fine, say $20, would act as a reminder for that democracy depends on everyone showing up. To me, voting should be Voting should be seen as a patriotic duty, not just a right. A system like Australia's could make our elections fairer, reduce polarization, and make politicians accountable to all Americans, not just the ones who turn out. Change my view. Why wouldn't this work in the USA? What makes mandatory voting unfair and unwise?
It's the exact opposite. We should have less people vote, not more.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? We were talking about this earlier today in my call-in show, right? Like the founding fathers, right? Like you have to think where they're coming from. Yes, they're rejecting like the tyranny of like a central government figure in the form of a king, right? They don't like that. These are smart, intelligent, industrious people that are basically being told you don't have a say in how your country's ran. It's some dude across the ocean that's never been there that's going to tell you how to live your way of life. They don't like that. So then they come here, and after they successfully revolt, right, they write the Articles of Confederation. It's a mess. It's too bad in the opposite direction. There is zero central authority. So what they're attempting to do is sort of have it sort of the best parts of both ways. Did you know the word democracy is not written in the Constitution anywhere? Because the founding fathers reject the concept of democracy. In fact, they're quite clear that they think that there are huge problems with the tyranny of the majority.
Rob? I think we lost him. Or is that me? Is that me? Oh, that might be me. Oh, goodness gracious. All right. Having some technical difficulties here. I don't know what's going on.
So, Spiro, if you're listening, we're probably going to be a little late getting to you. I know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had like it was like buffering a bit. Oh, it's frozen again? Is that me? Yeah, that's me. I have no, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going on. All right, well, let me check this out real quick.
Sparrow, you got me? Thanks, man. Can you hear me now? I think you unfroze.
Yeah, I can hear you now. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It's a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we're all good now. I think we're all
Good,
good
good
now.
deal. But anyways, the founding fathers, so they didn't want just the average person voting. They put, I'm not in favor of just saying only white men could vote, but the idea of like a certain elite, you needed to be a certain elite to have a say. They picked landowners, right? Men, you had to be a man, you had to be of a certain age, right? It wasn't about democracy. And even then, if you would accept that, like, the amount of people in a particular area that could vote, it was already small, maybe like 20% of the people that lived there. And yet, of the eligible people to vote, it was a very small portion. And yet, undoubtedly, the system was functioning much better at the onset of the country than it is now, with a very small percentage of the people actually having a vote. Not only that, the only actual position that there was a Democratic vote for was the House of Representatives. The Senate wasn't picked by direct vote of the people, nor was the president. The Electoral College back then was appointed by the Senate. So you didn't have a say in it as an average American, right? This was actually better because the truth is, as much as we hate to admit it, there's an awful lot of people that would be petty with their vote, that would be subject to sort of the whims of the moment, and that, are outright uninterested, ignorant, or dumb. And maybe they shouldn't have a vote. The idea, like, it's so funny. This post is like, I remember even being a younger person. There used to be this big thing on MTV, get out the vote. You'd have like Puff Daddy come on or something, in between his Diddy parties and be like, hey, everybody, y'all need to get out there, no matter what you're doing, don't matter who you vote for, go vote. Diddy's voting, so go vote. And it's like, yeah, if you're voting because Diddy told you, don't. Just stay home, right? Because if that's how ill-informed you are, that you had to be told by some celebrity, and you're like, oh my gosh, T Swift likes Kamala. I'll vote for Kamala. That's a huge mistake. We don't want those people voting, right? Now, I'm okay with the idea, the limit I would put on voting at this point is you should have to vote with, barring few exceptions, such as military service or crippling disease, you should have to vote with an ID in person, election day, right? But you should be informed. You should get yourself informed. You absolutely should. And it's okay. It's okay to not be informed. That does not make you the. If I had to choose of all the things that makes you a good person, being an informed voter is way down the list. How about being a good son? How about being a good father or husband? How about being good at your church, right? How about being a good neighbor? All those things are more important than being an informed voter, right? But if you want to be involved in the process, pick an issue, even if it's just one issue. Hey, I think that we should have a more robust social safety net. Great. Then inform yourself. What are the people that are running that you could vote for? What are their positions on that? Do the bare minimum. So the idea that it's like, well, in Australia, we tell everyone they have to vote. What a disaster. It's the exact opposite of what we want. And there's so many people that vote that don't have a clue, and they're not even trying. Or the reasons they give are just like, well, I'm voting this way because, my favorite celebrity told me to vote this way. It's baffling to me. So, no. If anything, I would say that mandatory voting would make the system much, much worse. Why should someone be penalized for exercising their right not to have a say? They absolutely have the right to not have a say, and I think I support their right to do that, and I have no problem putting more barriers up to voting rather than less.
No, I 100% agree. I think the selling point for me is women make up majority population in this country, and they also account for the deciding factor in a lot of degeneracy votes in this country. I think once I hear that, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, 100%. Less people should vote for sure.
Now, now listen, we could probably have a debate in this. I know a lot of my audience is like, no, repeal the 19th, no women voting. I wouldn't go that far yet, but I do think that the minimal barrier that I put, showing up with an ID on the day of voting, solves 80% of the problem. And then I'm open to hearing discussions about putting further limitations on the right to vote.
Yeah, would you be for like a test or something like that, some sort of like knowledge exam in that regard?
With that, who's going to form the test? It'll be some academic nerd that designs that test, so all of my great blue collar friends that like dropped out of school in 9th grade don't get to vote, when those dudes probably have more wisdom for how to run a country than like 90% of the academics. But the academics will design the test so that the academics pass it, right? But theoretically, I would be okay for some sort of like civics, having to pass some sort of civics test in order to understand the role of government. Here's things I've kicked around. One way to add voting, kind of, is maybe you should get an additional vote for your child if they're under the age of 18. So the father in the home gets a second ballot to fill out for them because you have more of a stake, right? So your vote should count more. So maybe something like that. And then the limiting forms of government that I've thought of, and I wouldn't say that I accept any of these yet, but I think are worth talking. Landowner to some degree, or having a child or some combination thereof, right? Raising the age possibly to something like 25. If you are a net payer in to our government, you get the right to vote. If you are a net taker out, you do not get the right to vote. So if you take more out in welfare a year than you pay in, no vote for you. And I would also consider including that to people that work government jobs. If your job is you getting paid by our tax dollars, then maybe you shouldn't get a right to vote because you will vote yourself more tax dollars, right? So instead, let the rest of us decide how good of a job you're doing and if you deserve a raise or something to that effect. So these are different things that I've kicked around, and there's possible other things, right? Like maybe you have to be at least second generation to vote. If you came here, you don't get any right to vote, even if you're a legal citizen. You know, I mean, you could go Starship Troopers style, and like you have to have some sort of civil service or military service in order to be a full-fledged citizen and have the right to vote. I'm not saying I agree with any of these, but these are all on the table of things that I can see that illustrates. I think the problem is not that there are too many or not enough people voting, but there are too many people voting that are uninformed. And if we can't force those people to get informed, which you can't, it's impossible, then maybe it's time to limit voting to people that are exhibiting that they're putting more of an effort and thought into the system. Because ultimately, if we get to a tyranny of democracy, you don't have to listen to me. Go listen to the founding fathers. And it plays out right in front of us. What do you do when 51% of the people in a particular country rely on the government for their existence? How would you ever shrink the size of government? Those people are never voting for themselves to lose their way of life, ever. And that's it. And then it just becomes a self-fulfilling spiral until it's no longer sustainable. And we're not there yet, but that's the direction we're heading. And so, for me, it's like, yeah, something needs to change. And I think that the solution offered by that Redditor is the exact opposite. Forcing everyone to vote would be a nightmare.
No, 100%. I definitely agree there. I think along the lines of how we do the driver, like to get a driver's license, you have to take a test, or you have to pass that test in order to get there. I think you take a day, day school. You have to go something to go out of your way to kind of show that you have an interest in this, that you want to be able to vote. Something that takes time out of your day, takes time out of your weekend or something. I think that way we get people who truly have like an interest, or I guess they truly have some sort of like want to make decisions in this case and whatnot, to go take a class, pass some sort of exam, and be able to have that right, amongst all the other requirements that we would need. I feel like a certain age as well. I'm a young guy, but I feel like people my age, more often than not, probably shouldn't have the right to vote and be able to cancel out the vote of somebody who's informed. You know what I mean? Things of that nature.
It's interesting. And look, I know, here's the thing, right? Like everybody, it's hard to hear this, right? But here's the truth. And I've been talking about this. It's so weird. This came up a lot lately, right? The idea of like, we're not all cut out to be leaders, and that's okay. Or rather, there's different areas of leadership. So like, I'm never going to be a leader in my church. I'm not, right? I'm not going to be a priest, right? And I'm probably not going to be a deacon, and I'm just not. It's enough for me. I just started, to be honest. I've been Christian for a while, but I didn't go to church. So who am I to like kick in the door and be like, I demand a position. I'm going to work my way up to some sort of, position of leadership. I'm more than happy to say, yes, this is not the time and place for me to be a leader. I want to be a servant. I want to help the people that are leaders, right? The same's true of politics. Yes, I ran for Congress, but to be quite honest, I want to run for Congress. I don't like cities as it is. I hate DC. I don't want to be there. I love the rednecks that I hang around with every day. That's who I love. I don't want to lose myself going and dealing with this, because I think a lot of people that get involved in politics probably are decent people with a decent idea, and it just corrupts you. You're there for so long, and it's so bleak, and you see how disgusting and dirty everything is, and to get anything moved even an inch in the direction you want, you got to play this dirty game, and it changes you. And a lot of people are just scummy to get there in the first place. But nonetheless, I don't want to be there. I'm more than happy to work to help someone on their campaign, or just to help as a voter, or just to help with my show and tell people like, hey, I think this is a good person. That's okay, right? And if you take that principle out, the same could be said of like your right to have input in the electoral system in the first place. Ask yourself this question. If you could see in a crystal ball, and I know that this isn't the best way to decide things, but just as a test, if you could see in a crystal ball and they took away your right to vote because you don't meet a certain category, maybe that category was you have to pass some sort of civic exam that for whatever reason you just can't pass. But 20 years from now, you can see that the country is in a far better direction according to you than it would be had that change not occurred. Would you support it? I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment because it's difficult for people to say, like, you know what? Yeah, I'm okay not having a voice in this. I'm okay, but sometimes that's the way things are. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm willing to accept, that there is an awful lot of things in life that I'm not very good at. And I'm listening to other people, right? And I'm not saying, well, let me give my input in that. I accept it. I'm like, okay, and I wonder if voting would be one of those things. Now, I'm not there yet. I'm not. I'm with you though. I think I'm with you. It's like, dude, let's get some sort of barrier that even if it doesn't imply intelligence, just a barrier that implies effort.
Yeah.
As opposed to
100%.
some dude's like, yo, I'm harvesting ballots. Bring your shit out of here. Come on, let's go. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that? This is what's swinging votes? That person that's like, oh, I guess here. There you go. That's it? That's the effort that's put into important decisions in the direction of our country? And we're going to have millions of people that put that level of effort into it? And that counts as much as maybe some guy who's doing way more than me. It's like I tried to painstakingly go through all the candidates' history, and I tried to do the math on their sort of tax proposals. Why should those people doing that be overwhelmed by the people over here? And I think the founding fathers understood that, and I think they were wise to do so. And it may not be popular to say today. It may be popular to say, that's not true. No one's better than anyone. Everyone gets one vote. That's the way it should be. But no, I don't know that that is the case. So,
Yeah, I've never really been a fan of the whole right to vote thing. I feel like it's more of a privilege, you got to earn that, But
Starship Troopers, baby. Yeah.
yeah,
Read that book. Yeah.
100% more of a privilege than a right. And I had that debate a couple episodes back with a feminist about that. The whole right to vote. It's always been since the beginning of the founding of our country a privilege, and we kind of lost that. We just made it. Oh, you're over 18. You go ahead and vote. Go ahead and do it. You're not even from the country. Maybe you don't even have documents. Let's just get you in there. Let's get you in the ballots. Let's put you there. But yeah, no.
Lest this gets clipped again. Just to summarize my position is if you're over 18, you're a citizen of this country. You get to vote. However, you have to have identification and have to vote in person.
Yeah.
That would eliminate so much of the low effort. You have to make. That's the minimal amount of effort. I'm willing to accept that, but that is at least a minimal amount of effort. Show up, take a day off, go vote, right? And that's it. And, obviously, if you're serving the military overseas, of course, that's a different matter altogether.
Yeah.
Or if you're, like, bedridden through some debilitating disease, that I understand as well. But that's it. This business of sending ballots and then we have to pretend that it's not easy to... I had someone, the true story, I had someone admit to me a felony just the other day streaming. And it was just someone who called in on the call-in show. It wasn't even a debater. And they were sort of agreeing with me. And they're like, well, last time I didn't vote, my sister filled out my ballot for me.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm like,
yeah.
No, don't say that. You can't do that. That's a crime.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know. How many times is that occurring? And I think Rasmussen did a poll on this, and it was something like some crazy number. Like 40% of Democrats polled admitted to having someone else fill out their ballot or filling out someone else's ballot. It's like, what a nightmare. What an absolute nightmare. And, there was a time to even say this on social media on a place like YouTube would have got both of our channels banned instantly. That's how insane our system is. You can't even point out the obvious,
Yeah, no, 100%. I kind of wanted to segue a little bit into your run for office,
Yeah.
and I kind of wanted to kind of inquire, first and foremost, what was the reason that kind of pushed you to want to do that, and how kind of was the process to you getting there?
So the reason was very similar to me starting a YouTube channel in the first place, which was basically my wife got tired of hearing me complain about politics. I was like, well, do something about it, which is sort of a joke, but sort of true. I sort of came to the conclusion that maybe I shouldn't just be sitting on my chair talking. Maybe I should do more, right? So I had been involved with my county Republicans, and I sort of had mentioned in my district, which in Pennsylvania we had been redistricted recently, but in my district we had the longest sitting Republican congressman in my district in the state of Pennsylvania. In other words, in all the state, there's like, whatever there is, 17, 19, I can't remember, but let's say there's 20 districts. The Republican in Congress that had been there the longest was my Republican. So I inquired, I said, how long does he plan to continue to run? I would be interested at some point because I thought that I had some ideas that I didn't see traditional Republicans sort of pushing. And with the oncoming of Donald Trump, I saw that there was a different direction that the Republican Party was going in that I thought represented sort of my values, and I would like to push for that. And basically, I was told to shut my mouth. And I was told to even suggest saying something that implied that I might primary someone and that I must, like, take my turn. And I'm young, and I'm not really young now. I'm 41 now, but I was in my 30s. And shut your mouth, right? You wait your turn. You're a team player, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't like that. But I played ball. I said, fine. Well, 2018 election, this is kind of difficult to explain, so I'll try to do it as simple as possible. Imagine this. There's a circle that's a district. Now, I didn't move. Now, this circle encompassed me here and then a bunch of people over here. But then they shifted that circle when they redistricted. I still live in the same area. This district that I used to be connected to, at least parts of it, right, I'm now no longer in. Not because I moved, but because they just redistricted. The guy that won there was a guy by the name of Tom Marino. Big Trump guy. Italian dude. Him and this guy, Lou Barletta, that was congressman. They used to call them Thunder and Lightning. That's how lame we are in Pennsylvania. But that was these two pro-Trump congressmen. He got a serious illness. So he wins the election in 2018 and then announces, look, I'm not going to be able to fulfill my term because of my illness. So they had what was called a special election. That's no primary. So I can't be accused of stepping on someone's toes, right? That's what I was told. Wait until they're done and then run. But don't even suggest running while there's a Republican to primary. So even though it wasn't the district I lived in, I had never moved, and it was a district that I was connected to my whole life, I decided to run. And I was one of 24 people by the end of the convention that ran. It was slightly different. It's not the same as a primary. Instead, what they did was they had what was called conferees, and I believe the final amount of conferees they had was 212. Each county, based on the percentage of votes they had for Tom Marino, got that many conferees. And then those conferees would ultimately pick who the Republican candidate would be. And whoever the Republican candidate was would be the congressman because this district's like 70 to 80% Republican. So the Democrat was never going to win. So I did the conferee things. That's how I decided to get into it. I thought that I had a message that I wanted to get out there, and I didn't have to primary anyone. And my goal was to win. My secondary goal was to speak at the convention and sort of let what I would consider establishment Republicans know sort of what I thought of them. And so I did not win, surprise, surprise, but I did do well enough to get to speak at the conferee meeting. So
That's good. And what was kind of the message that you were saying in that meeting or in that conference at that point?
So the way it went was you had to be in the top 10 to be able to speak. So you go to the conferee convention, and there's 24 of us, and you didn't even get to give a speech. They had a round of voting, and the top 10 advanced to the next round. And then what they would do was you had to have at least 5% of the vote, or you lost, and then they'd do the voting again until eventually someone got over 50%. So I made it into the top 10. And my speech, everyone's giving this speech that's the same. Well, I'd be pro-life and I'd be pro-Second Amendment, and, we need to get these, expensive liberals out of there and debts and blah, blah, blah. And my speech was different. I was like, I think he had 5 minutes. So the short of the speech I gave was I just stood up and I started telling humorous stories about how much I suck, right? And I was like, look, I've lived in rural Pennsylvania my whole life. I've lived in the same 20-minute radius, and I'm the worst redneck you'll ever see, right? I love the rednecks. Love them. But, in my house, I fought for an hour and a half trying to replace a toilet seat once, and my wife came home from work and had it repaired within 5 minutes. The first time I ever hunted, right, I sat there paralyzed for 15 minutes looking into the scope of this deer. My brother, who's 2 years younger than me, gets out of the car, loads his gun, walks 50 yards aside from me, pulls up the gun, shoots the deer, kills it in the spot. I'm just the worst. And I'm just telling story after story about how bad I am as a redneck, and everyone's laughing. And I was like, but those are the people I love. And you know what I was good at? I was good at speaking. And I was good at debating. That's what I was good at. And so I went to college and I had the privilege because of parents that supported me and because of just, my unique interest that I had. And, I had some ability that I became, a nationally ranked debater. And so I said, what can I do for all these people I love? They're busy. They're not following politics, but not me. I have time and I have an interest. And so what I could do is come here and to the best of my ability be a voice for them. Now I understand I'm probably not going to win. But we're sick and tired of sending you people to Washington to represent us and you getting there and forgetting about us. And I just want to let you know that you think you're untouchable, but if you don't change, they're going to send rednecks like me and we're going to take your job because you're not special and you're not better than us. And you ought to be a privilege to represent the great people of rural Pennsylvania instead of looking at it like a chore. That was my message. And I got a standing ovation, which is ironic because I'm basically criticizing the people in the room. Is basically what I'm doing. But of course, it's not me. It's everyone else he's criticizing. Yeah. And of course, there were congressmen there. I'd like to have coffee for you. I'd like to pick your brain and blah, 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 blah. Now, I didn't win, and there's a big, long story as to why. I mean, part of it's because maybe I wasn't the best candidate, even though I would disagree. But there was a little nepotism going on. Each county that picked their conferees had a candidate from that county. And guess who those conferees voted for? The person from that county that was running. And seeing as how I didn't live in any of those counties, I was fighting a mighty uphill battle. My only chance to win was to be a bunch of people's second pick and then hope the right people got knocked out first so that those counties would say, okay, Rob was our second pick. But it didn't work out that way. But that was it. That was the speech I gave. And that was sort of my foothold into a lot of cool events I've done since working with the Republican Party in Pennsylvania, because I met some people there, including a good friend of mine and former radio co-host of mine, Carlos Saldivia. I met him through there, and he has connections like everyone in Central PA in the Republican Party. So I do a lot of work, not in my own district with the Republicans, who they're not big fans of mine because they looked at me as stepping on their toes, but out towards Central PA. So that was it. That's basically what my message was. And, there's been a lot of cool people, including, some congressmen that took that message to heart and talked to me routinely. And I've helped write speeches and I've helped develop platforms and stuff like that. I probably about once every other month, I talk to a lot of these people involved in Pennsylvania Republicans. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So obviously, you didn't win. Do you think that generally that was a, looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020. You think that the fact that you didn't win that election was probably for the best looking back at it, or do you think that you definitely still would have wanted to win that one?
I would have wanted to win. I think I would have done better to winning, and it would have put myself in a more influential position. To the question of was it worth it? Well, $9,000 of credit card debt says no, because I made the big man stance of I refuse to take any money. I'm going to run it on my own. Well, it was expensive, so I probably racked up somewhere between $7,000 and $9,000 of credit card debt, which I just paid off last year. Yay.
Nice. Congratulations.
6 years
That's
later.
awesome.
Yes, I did it. I'm out of that credit card debt. But the guy that won, his name was Fred Keller. Pennsylvania lost a seat and they redistricted, and he was out at the end of the term anyways. So he didn't make much of a difference. He got to fill out maybe there was one more term after that, but he only got to serve 1 or 3 years. I can't remember which one it was, and he did fine. He was okay. I wish I would have won. I still think it would have done more good. But despite the fact that it cost me money and I probably wouldn't run for Congress again, I do think that it was a positive experience because, one, it showed me the good side and the dirty side of politics in a real, observable way, that I was involved with. But it also got me a lot of connections that I think has helped me at least have some small amount of influence on the actual political world. And I think a lot of times what happens is a lot of streamers that talk about politics and stuff, there's a disconnect and there's not a lot they're doing when it comes to real world politics. And the three areas that I've been trying to combine are, because I had a radio show as well with some of these folks out there. I was trying to combine sort of a Rush Limbaugh-esque, older generational, right-wing radio audience, right? With the newer sort of streaming type right-wingers that we have and a traditionally younger audience that you see on here with real-world politicians. And so I still do that. I still go to a lot of these Republican events. And, I'll be honest with you, man. It's not, I put on my best button-down shirt, and I try to fit in, but I'm just a redneck. I am. Like even on here, even on this stream, I'm good. I'm a good debater. I talk well. I have some amount of intelligence, but I am just a redneck. That's it. And this is who I like. I like these people. I like my neighbors. I like
Yeah.
my family. That's what I want. And so it's not I'm pretty easy to get along with and can get along with different groups of people. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to wear different hats and try to bring people in together. And I somewhat have a unique opportunity, as you mentioned earlier. If people don't know, I work with an organization called the Crucible. That they pay me to be a member of their team, and it's led by a great man named Andrew Wilson, who's an Orthodox Christian.
Shout
And
out to Andrew Wilson.
so yes, and like he called himself a Christian nationalist, Christian populist. And one of the things I'm trying to do is to be a middle ground for him, who has a tremendous and growing online audience, to real world politicians. Because a lot of these, particularly in the Republican Party, these politicians, it's still, let's put up yard signs, let's call phone banks, right? Let's call people, and it's like, yeah, you're missing a huge opportunity. And as we said earlier, it's something like AOC gets. It's
Yeah.
something that the Trump people get this more, that there's a new form of media, and it's becoming more and more important. The traditional Sunday, CBS, Meet the Press type shows, those are waning. And
Yeah.
eventually their popularity is gonna keep waning. It's gonna be these social media platforms. And these politicians, the sooner they understand that and say, look at this. Here's big platforms that have built a base, that have built not just, and you have to understand that it's not just the numbers, it's the type of people that are watching. It's the fact that people that are watching that are more likely to send super chats if you say, hey, can you guys get out there and tell 10 people about the message of this politician? They're going to be more dedicated to do so than if you're just putting a yard sign up. And
Yeah.
so I'm really trying to make that push, and it's something that I'm going to really be pushing for next year. That I am going to try to get a lot of mainstream politicians, particularly at the national level, but also at the state level in various states, and to get them to try to come on board with at least giving us interviews, at least having us be in. And it's a mutually beneficial situation. They're not going to like everything. The politicians ain't going to like everything I say. They're not going to like everything you say or Andrew Wilson says. But and we ain't going to like everything that they stand for. But what it does is it allows them to get access to a non-traditional audience that they're going to need in the future. And it allows us to have more of a say in helping shaping what those policies will be. And so I think in both senses, it's not a perfect match, but it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And I hope to be some small part of it. So that's sort of where my foray into debate and politics and like the world of radio, albeit it was just a small radio show, how that merges with what I'm doing today and what I'm trying to do. So.
No, 100%. I think that going into YouTube, going into streaming and things of that nature, as like on the political side of things, on the political side of YouTube, I think a thing we got to think about as our end goal is to be able to use this platform we're creating in order to be able to move turn the to move that needle somewhere. You know what I mean? To move that somewhere and to be able to make a change without having to go the route of actually running for office or things of that nature. It's like not everybody wants to be the president of the United States. Not everybody wants to be a senator or like a representative or something like that. But there's still change we can make, especially as influencers, as creators on YouTube. We have an audience, like you said, and we can definitely utilize this audience in order to be able to move that needle to where we want it to be. And so can the people who are actually running for offices. So that's definitely something I've been thinking about a lot as well. I kind of wanted to move a little bit toward, or actually, you had something you wanted to say?
No, I was just gonna say, anyone who's watching, listen. The most important thing is to live your life and exhibit the values that you live. If you're Christian, exhibit those values in whatever you do, right? And so, let's say you're a streamer that's not politics. You're a welder that's a streamer. You still move the cultural narrative by exhibiting good personality traits that sort of show your morality or your religion or whatever it is that makes you who you are. You don't have to be the political debater. You don't have to be the senator. Every way actions are more important than words, and people recognize how you live your life, right? And so you might not be a streamer. Maybe you're just someone who works on a road crew. You're making roads, fixing potholes in roads. So your friends, your family, your neighbors, the people that see you from day to day, they can see how you live your life. And that'll be inspiring to them if you do it in the right way. So don't think, hey, I'd like to help change culture. I'd like to help change politics, but I'm uncomfortable running for office, or I'm uncomfortable doing a show or calling in or doing a stream. So what? You don't need to directly be involved in that process. Helping change the culture will be far more important than winning a particular election, anyways. So, yeah, everyone could help just by showing that you're a good person, that you're a moral person, that you're a conservative, that you're a Christian, or any part thereof, and showing others, not through your words, but through your actions, how that makes you a good, successful person.
Yeah, we're definitely creatures who adapt to the people that we have surrounding each and every one of us. Living a life that is fulfilling, truly fulfilling, and exhibiting that, and being able to be proud of that. People are going to see that and want to exude that same
Yep.
thing too. So I definitely see where you're coming from in that regard. It's the same thing in the Catholic Church. We have this big issue of not really getting with the times, in a sense of being able to catechize, to I think I'm saying that right, to event, to be able to teach in an ever growing medium that is social media. And we have people like Father Mike Schmitz, who has a YouTube channel, very big YouTube channel, and people love him, and people gravitate towards him, and he gets that message out there. But we need more people like that.
Sure.
And it's the same thing it's the same thing in politics as well. Parties need to understand that there is a form of media that is very, very powerful, growing in today's society, that is social media. And some of the best politicians, they know how to use it. Like you said, AOC, as much as we don't like her, I mean, at least me, I don't like her whatsoever, but she knows how to use that, and she knows how
Correct.
to do it effectively. But the power of social media will definitely be a tool, especially continuing moving forward, that will be used 100%. I kind of
Totally
wanted
agree.
yeah, I kind of wanted to speak a little bit about the current state of politics, and the divisive nature and the truly violent nature of politics today, and kind of what your thoughts are on what caused that, in maybe in recent times, or in just things that have kind of snowballed into what we have today. And if you think there's going to be some sort of breaking point in the near future, or if you think this is kind of just going to die down. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it really starts. I The groundwork for this was laid years before this, but I think the crescendo was Obama, and I think that with Obama we started to see that sort of this identity politics game, and then sort of the advent of a more blatant cultural Marxist game allowed Democrats to become more and more radical in saying, "Hey, our opponents are evil." Now, it wasn't just Obama. In fact, Obama might just happen to have been right person, right time, because other things conflagrate to this. The two things that I think are arguably more important is one, this seemed to be a culmination of the radical left taking over academia for at least two generations, right? And so, Yuri Brezhnev, former of the Soviet Union, said this: "Give me two generations of controlling academia, and I could completely take over a country." Right? That's was the Soviets thought in this, and that's what's happened. And other people that are less, partisan than me, such as Jonathan Haidt and Heterodox Academy, have talked about this. Right? Like academia has become incredibly left wing, and he also likens it to the second problem, which is social media. Right? And so when we see social media at the same time that academia, and I would argue then other things subsequent of that, entertainment industry, etc., becoming more and more radical left, we trained an entire generation or generations of young people to feel that their opponents are ontologically evil, right? And because of that, and those opponents then are getting more and more victories both in the culture and in politics, well, then the stakes are raised. And so in their minds, they truly look at you like you're evil. And you'll hear them say this sometimes. Big left wing debater or streamer I've debated before, Vosh. He's on a stream with a lefty. He's talking to a lefty, and the lefty's sort of like trying to talk him off a ledge, like, "Hey, I think you're getting like maybe a little too radical." And Bosch had kept using the term trans genocide. There is a trans genocide. So we tell people in the trans community, and look, I'm being very careful here on TOS. It doesn't matter what my feelings are. I'll just say this is an objective truth. A lot of people, the data backs this up, in the trans community also suffer other forms of depression, more likely, mental health crisis is more likely, etc. And they tend to be younger, a lot of these people. And so you're telling people in a vulnerable state, they're trying to wipe you all out systemically, right? That's what they're doing. They're coming for you. It's happening. They're going to wipe you out. They're going to eliminate you, right? It's a genocide. And Bosch goes on and says, well, what would we have done in the 1930s? Wouldn't we have stopped that Austrian guy? Shouldn't we have stopped him? Shouldn't we have done that? And then he comes out and blatantly says it. He says, I dream of a world where people were shooting out their windows at Patriot Prayer. Now, what he's referencing is there was this group, Patriot Prayer in Portland, who had put on a lawful assembly where they're doing basically a rally. And yes, they were open carrying, to my knowledge, legally, and they're driving up and down the road, etc. After this event, there was a guy by the name of Michael Reinhold, and I'm so sorry I forget the victim's name, which is terrible form, but Michael Reinhold, who is a self-professed Antifa member, walks up to one of these gentlemen that was at the Patriot Prayer and executes him, shoots him in cold blood in the street, murders him, and says, like, we got one of them. We got one of those Patriot Prayers, something like that, he says. Now, Vosh knows this incident. He knows that an Antifa guy did do what he recommended and shoot, and yet that doesn't cause his hesitancy. He says, that's what I want. I want them shooting at them. That's what I want. And that guy wasn't banned off social media, by the way, for saying this. You know, I was getting community strikes because I would say things like, hey, I have COVID. Here are my symptoms. That was considered medical misinformation that was getting my channel struck, right? But someone like that who's reaching thousands upon thousands of people to my, dozens that I was reaching at the time, he says that and people take it seriously. They listen. They say, yes, you're right. Yes. And so as you see this, sort of the divide has become more and more stark, and the left continues to think our opponents are evil. They are like that Austrian. That's who they are. They're going to commit genocide. They're going to take us out. They're right now innocent people that are migrants and some American citizens that are just trying to feed their families. They're putting black bags over their head and kidnapping them to never be seen again, probably murdering them. Shouldn't we fight back against that? Don't we have a duty? Don't we have a moral duty? Another guy I debate, Connor, he told me that I'm a coward if I'm unwilling to use lethal force to prevent a politician from coming to power who is a communist or a fascist. Now, he'll also work with people that over and over say, and by the way, Trump's a fascist. So he's just laid the groundwork for, not only would it be acceptable to use some amount of lethal violence against a politician like that, you would be a coward not to. That's the claim. And so when you have these people that truly feel, they have convinced themselves, they have gaslit themselves. It's like, if you've ever been in a situation like this, like, did you ever go where, like, there's one school, my high school, our football team, and there's the other football team, and it's like you talking yourself up. Like, you're not just going to go fight them, but your buddy's talking about, come on, you kick that guy's ass. Yeah, get him. Yeah, did you hear what he said about your mom? Yeah. And you're like pumping yourself up. You're like, yeah. And all your buddies are pumping you up. And maybe it's some fight you would have never got in, but there's your boys, like amping you up. And by the way, that guy you're about to fight, his boys are doing the same thing, right? That's what it's like. They keep amping the stakes. Yeah, and it's like that. Yeah, and they're committing transgenocide. Yeah, and guess what they're going to do next? They're going to take us all out. Yeah, and we're morally, we have to do this. We have to do this. The footage I talk about a lot that really illustrates it in a more sort of humorous way, but not really if you think about it. There was this comedian. I forget, he was on like some online channel. I've heard this guy's not the nicest guy. I'm not sure. I think his name was Vito, something like that. Unfamiliar with his work. Nonetheless, Dave Chappelle had done a Netflix special, and he made some jokes at the expense of the LGBTQ+, particularly the T's. He made some jokes at their expense. And so there was this big movement at Netflix where they were pissed off, some workers there, because Netflix was hosting this special. So outside Netflix headquarters, they decided to do a little protest. So this comedian guy, Vito, shows up, and he's holding a broomstick. And at the top of the broomstick, he has a sign that says something to the effect of, like, comedy is funny. Something benign like that. And the point is, it's okay to tell jokes. And a comedian said, so he shows up, and he's by himself, and all of a sudden he gets surrounded, and first they're just chirping at him, and then the mob's getting up and up and up, and finally they grab his sign, and they're like wrestling it from him, and they rip the sign portion off, and now he's just holding a broomstick, and the guy that ripped the sign yells, he's got a weapon! Now he knows it's not a weapon, it was just a sign that he just himself ripped the sign off. Now it looks like he's just holding a stick, like a weapon. And the comedian looks at the guy and says, why are you doing this? And the guy says, because you're awful. And that's it. That sums it up. That's why the violence is escalating, because they truly think you are subhuman, you are awful, you're an evil person. And so we might not start off using violence against you. We might try to beat you in the culture war. And if that doesn't work, then we'll try to get you censored. And if that doesn't work, then we'll try to get you thrown in jail, or we'll beat you at the ballot box. And if that doesn't work, then we'll try to throw you in jail. But if that doesn't work, well, there's an answer for that too. We'll use violence. And maybe it starts off just violence and intimidation. We shove you, we push you down, we make sure that you can't go see Milo Yiannopoulos speak at Berkeley or Gavin McInnes or Ben Shapiro. But maybe that doesn't work. So then we'll throw fists. And maybe that doesn't work. Then we'll show up outside your house. But maybe that doesn't work. Well, then you have Charlie Kirk. And that's it. Or you have, the United Healthcare CEO, Brian, I forget his last name. And that's it. And they're not ashamed. Those people, if you're one of these broken down people that are sort of, mentally fragile, they think they're going to go down as heroes. We did this, who cares? My life was meaningless anyways. Now look, I did this great thing, for my people. There's a transgenocide. That's how they feel. Another example I could give you, go to my pinned tweet on my X account. Rob Noerr on X, by the way. It's a trans adult film star by the name of Tiffany Starr. Now, I'd interacted with Tiffany on these panels in the past. It was always cordial. Didn't exactly find them to be too intelligent. Nonetheless, one of the times we interacted was about what's a better game, Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter? Because we're both around the same age. I'm 41. So, for me, it was the old Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo days. And the first fighting games to really make it big on console for people of my generation was like Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter. We have a cordial discussion, person leaves. I find out that Tiffany told a bunch of people that I had, tried to take out their existence or some shit. I'm like, what? What are you even talking about? We were talking about video games. Apparently, someone in my chat criticized me for using the pronouns asked by the person I was talking to, which at the time, and still largely, you could be banned on social media for refusing to use the correct pronouns. So when I explained, hey, I'm not trying to violate TOS, I'm trying to be cordial, Tiffany took that as I really wanted to, I guess, erase their existence. All right. Well, fast forward to the Nashville trans shooter of the Nashville school that murdered 6 people, including children. And Tiffany put out immediately, in fact, I'll go right here. I have it pinned at the top. I can tell you exactly. As Tiffany's pinned tweet was a picture of this character from one of the new Resident Evil games who in his trench coat's selling a bunch of weapons, grenades and guns and that. And Tiffany writes, "Me when more trans women rise up to stop fascists from taking away their right to exist. Hashtag trans terrorism. Hashtag Tennessee. Hashtag stop fascism." And in other words, good. Let's get more weapons to more trans shooters. That's it. Now that person said that without pin tweet. Proud to show the world. This is what I think. Absolutely. And there's no consequences. There's no loss of social media. There's no societal consequences, especially back then. And it's one of the things, one of the grotesque but silver linings of the Charlie Kirk thing is, I think it was the first time that people had said, fuck you, enough's enough. Right? Yeah, you should lose your fucking job. You're a second grade teacher and you're celebrating this murder? If you want him murdered, you want me murdered. And you're teaching my children? No, fuck you. No, we refuse to accept this. And they're shocked. They can't believe it. And I've been saying this. I got a video, a short from like March or April of this year where I was like, one of the things you'll see is the left loses power culturally and politically. The violence is going to escalate because they've gaslit themselves into thinking this is it. This is World War III. We have to stop this, right? And originally, when the consequences start to come, they're not going to get it. They're going to be like, what? Huh? That this is crazy. Like, that's how they're going to look at it. And that's what you saw with the Charlie Kirk stuff. Like, they're going to their social media profiles with their names, where their places of employment are listed. And they're like, yay, I'm happy he got murdered. Yay, more of it. And they were totally taken aback when people were like, what are you doing? No, you're fired. And they didn't expect it. And, the easiest way I could put this is imagine that you're one of these people that bragged about Charlie Kirk getting killed and celebrated in social media, and then you lose your job, and then you turn on your TV and you see a Charlie Kirk vigil. Me and you look at that and we go, at least in this time of tragedy, people are coming together and they're worshiping Christ and they're saying, we're going to remember the memory of this great man. You want to know what that person's thinking? Look at all those Nazis. That's what they're thinking. Their lesson from this wasn't, oh, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe when people reacted to me with such hostility, like, what are you doing? Maybe I was in the wrong. Their reaction is, I can't believe how many Nazis there are in this country. And so, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I mean, I guess what you do is you balkanize, you shame those people. We don't use violence. We don't retaliate in that way. You hope that we win cultural battles. You turn to God. You turn to people that are like-minded. You refuse to accept these people in our polite society, and you call them out at any given moment. You boycott what you can. You try to totally isolate yourself from these people, and hopefully, after a while, the harsh lesson hits them in the head that says, I'd like to be part of that society again. Maybe I'll make gradual changes, and I'll act like it never happened, or I'll have a mea culpa for what happened. But I don't know. I mean, they are high on their own supply, so to speak, and there's no shortage of it. That we are evil people, and we deserve to get these comeuppance. And it's sad because there is no part of me that's like that. None. There is no part of me. As much as I despise these people that have celebrated the murder of Charlie Kirk, no part of me looks at them and goes, you know what? Maybe I'll use violence against you. It never occurs to me. Screw you. I don't want to deal with you. That's it. That's the extent of my harshness. And if you've directly called for someone's life, then the legal system should be employed against you. But that's it. And I don't know. It's a depressing thought that that's where we're at in this country. 55% of Democrats polled said that they could at least somewhat justify the murder of Donald Trump. By the way, this polling occurred after 2 assassination attempts on Trump's life. So this isn't in a vacuum. Oh, I didn't really think through it. No. They've thought through it. And they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Just even going out and expressing your views as a conservative nowadays, you have that in the back of your head that you might be shot. You might be beat up in the streets. Who knows what might happen? You always have to be careful now. More so today, just simply because you have a different view. You have something. Yeah, you think something different than these people, but you deserve to be killed for it. Okay, so moving on to the second to last thing, I want to ask this question real quick, and then we can move on to the final thing of the show, and I'll get you out of here. So that thing that you had to do afterwards. You said that was at 10:30.
My co-host, he's listening right now. He'll deal with it. He knows. Right now, I assure you, he's working with AI as we speak, so he'll be all right. So.
Oh, okay, I didn't want to hold you up, but I just we're get to this last question, and then we can move on to the final thing, and get you out of here. I'm curious. Question here, coming up, the next election that comes up, it's about 3.5 years from now, give or take. So we still have a long ways away, but just a little bit of a mind experiment here. What are your thoughts on who the RNC and the DNC should put up as their candidates, and who do you think should be up, and who do you think will be the chances?
So it's hard to say who I think the DNC who I would like to see them put up. There's 2 ways to look at that. I would like to see them put up the most ridiculous person so they don't win, right? So who would be strategically, in my opinion, the best person? Well, there's 2 ways to look at this. One would be someone like Andy Bashir, who I think would at least appear more moderate, and he's well-spoken. I think he's an intelligent person that's a good communicator, sort of like the opposite of someone like Kamala. So I think that going in that direction would be good. Now, the downside to that's like, it's a white dude. So we'll see if the Democratic Party's primary accepts that. The other wild card that I would say is I would not be surprised if it's a total non-political person. That if you get like a Mark Cuban or a Jon Stewart or someone like that comes similar to how Trump did outside the world of politics, because it makes sense if you think about it for many reasons, not the least of which is if you're trying to like get the stink off of your brand, let's just have the face be someone who's not really been associated as an official member of that brand. And I think that, someone like Jon Stewart's intriguing for their perspective in that he's been involved in politics. He gets the base very excited. Like the Democratic base, I mean, so many of them now that are, I think you could trace a lot of the lack of like intelligible political discourse directly to Jon Stewart. And so they're going to love that, and to be fair, he's more moderate on a lot of positions than some of the more radical things, but also would probably be sort of like believable to the progressive left that like, hey, I want single payer option, Medicare for all, and things like that. So I think that someone like that, or a Mark Cuban, that's sort of a Donald Trump-esque figure of the left who's wealthy, that would be able to finance a lot of his own campaign, that would be a possibility. So, of course, don't write out Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom has two things going for him. One is that he is an absolute morally repugnant, shameless human being, which is an advantage because that means he could be a chameleon, and whatever way the political winds tell him to act in a moment, he'll do. And the other thing is he's an attractive man, and that matters, right? Being attractive is helpful in politics. You already said it's a popularity contest. You're largely right. And being attractive helps with that. And there's an awful lot of ladies that are going to be like, yeah, that's good.
It's kind of what happened with
Sad to
Trudeau
say.
a lot of the time.
That's right. That you're absolutely right. It's sad to say that, but that's reality. And if you're telling me like put your political strategist hat on, I'm evaluating that. So those are my options. As far as the Republicans, there's three potential ways that I can see this, and obviously take this with a huge grain of salt because we're a long way out. Number one, it could be someone like who would be the de facto person that it would have been if it wasn't Trump, probably Ron DeSantis. And I think DeSantis is doing himself good now. He harmed himself in his future prospects, not the fact that he ran against Trump, but in how he ran against Trump. And I think that it was a huge mistake, and I said it at the time. And Trump was my third choice. I had Vivek and DeSantis ahead of Trump in the primary that I supported.
Yeah, so did
But
I.
DeSantis made a huge mistake in that he trusted people to run that were like putting him at odds with Trump instead of Trump is a great man who did great things, but I could now take the torch and advance it. Instead, he was like, he sort of set him up at loggerheads with Trump. And yeah, it sucks to say that because it's like, well, Trump was certainly more aggressive to DeSantis than vice versa. Right, but that doesn't matter. DeSantis should have still known the goal is to try to win now. But if I don't, to position myself as the front runner next. I want to be, even if I don't get a position in Trump's team, if he wins, I want to be the governor that's his wingman. That's like, yes, so that then I'm positioned after Trump. So that's option number one. Option number two, this is more of a long shot, but could be someone like Don Jr. And it could be, that Trump decides I'm going to be kingmaker, and the guy that I know will listen to me more than anyone else is my son. So that's a possibility. Option three, also a dark horse, is Donald Trump, that he might decide. We talked about this. We talked about this in the extravaganza today. There are clever ways he could do it, right? He could just be like, look, it's going to be Don Jr. with VP candidate, whoever, Steve Bannon. And if they win, they will immediately step down and I will be Speaker of the House, and that will bump me to the presidency. So there is a possibility to do some clever things like that. There will never be enough will or votes to repeal the 22nd Amendment or to pass a new amendment to eliminate term limits for the president. That's not a possibility, but there are clever ways that they could try. But I think the most likely candidate's J.D. Vance. And I'm actually happy with that. There are things I don't like about Vance, like the Palantir connection. I think he needs to have a more succinct answer to that. But I think that J.D. Vance, my impression of him, and I know this is going to make people mad that don't like him, my impression of him from sort of his upbringing is similar to mine, except he was more impressive than me. He came from sort of a rural area where, this rural white area where drug abuse was a problem. He worked his way up, was tremendous. He sort of is this outlier that gets involved in, Ivy League. I wasn't in Ivy League, but I was in debate where it was like these very impressive, like left-wing, erudite, wealthy kids that were all that were in this activity. J.D. Vance is doing that in Ivy League school, I think that he truly hates the fact that the leading export of this country is monetary policy in dollars, and he wants to bring manufacturing back, and he's questioning how it helps the average citizen of the United States to continue to just export dollars instead of other things. And I think that he is incredibly intelligent and is incredibly charismatic in ways that, his opponents really underestimated. Remember, the whole attack was J.D. Vance is weird? Remember that? That was the attack against him? Please, right? The more that J.D. Vance gets in front of the cameras, the more he shines. And I think that in many ways, he stands to take the MAGA torch and run forward probably more than any of the other candidates. And in fact, here's the thing, like to anyone out there, if you're some psychopath and you're thinking it would be a good thing if someone takes Trump out, I think you'd live to regret that. Because if it becomes JD Vance, I think you're going to have a more tactful, tactician that's going to be able to really institute policies that you're not going to like. So that's where my money would be. So right now, if I had to be a betting man for the Republicans, I would say JD Vance. And unfortunately, I would say just because of the way that he's positioned himself, Gavin Newsom would be the most likely as we stand. But it's so far away. I would never even my confidence in those predictions are 5% at best because we're so far away. And literally my goodness, just someone could get in a car wreck. Let's change this picture, let alone, who knows? Maybe we're in a huge world war by then. That's going to change the outlook. Maybe there's a huge impeachment of Trump or a scandal, or JD Vance gets arrested, or Gavin Newsom gets arrested. Who knows what the possibilities are? But that's where I'd put my money right now.
That's completely reasonable. I would, I'd ask the follow up today, October 30th, 2025, at 10:37 p.m. Eastern Time. Elections are starting right now. It's JD Vance versus Gavin Newsom. Who do you think, just objectively speaking, who do you think would win that race today?
This is a very difficult question, and I'll tell you why. If there was any sort of time to campaign, I think Vance wins. If it's just like for whatever reason there's a snap election today, the problem is that the numbers show you that the first year or two outside of a massive win for a president and then that party winning Congress, it almost always switches in the next election. And so I think there would be a lot of I'm not exactly happy with how things are going, so I'm going to go with Newsom. So if it was held today, I'd probably put my money on Newsom, right? But if there's time for a campaign, the longer that campaign goes, the more it advantages Vance. Because Vance would absolutely destroy Newsom in any head-to-head conversation or any look. The more that people see how disastrous Gavin Newsom's been for California and how he's like sort of a two-faced chameleon that's flip-flopped on positions over and over again, I think that Vance would absolutely wreck him given any amount of campaigning time.
No, 100%. I definitely agree. It's kind of like the old Batman thing. You give him enough time for preparation, he beats anybody.
Yep.
So just to get into the final thing of today's show, I kind of want to get into some presidential rankings. Let's do this one rapid fire.
You got it.
I'm gonna give you some presidential names. You're gonna tell me in A, B, C, D, or F. Where you rank him. All right.
Gotcha.
All right. Here we go. So number one, starting off, the OG, the man himself, George Washington. Where are you putting him?
A. I'm putting him as an A. Yeah, I think he's maybe my favorite, at least in the top. Absolutely incredible, not just as a president, but as a person that symbolizes what this country's all about. And I think he's a tremendous, tremendous inspirer of men. Not the best tactician as a general, but he was so good at sort of like, from what I've read, sort of getting resources and things like that, sort of supply lines and stuff. As the first president, I think he's amazing. I give him an A.
A for George Washington. I would agree with that. Abraham Lincoln.
Probably not a popular opinion, but I'll give him a B. Right? Like I think a lot of people watch.
Would you say like a B minus or B plus?
Yes, B minus. That's what I would give him. I think that a lot of the decisions he made prolonged what the conflict would inevitably be with the Civil War, and there was probably a more diplomatic solution. But it was a difficult situation, and if I'm evaluating him against a lot of other presidents that I think were really bad, I think I give him a B minus, but close to a C.
Okay. All right. Theodore Roosevelt.
I'll give him a B, closer to a B plus. I think as a human being, he's amazing. Gave one of my favorite speeches ever. I have hanging up there, "The Man in the Arena." Absolute one of the most interesting men that have ever existed. Like conservationist, absolute Chad of a dude. One time got shot giving a speech and finished the speech, which is as badass as it comes. I guess Trump's right up there.
Yeah.
They forced him off the stage. But yeah, I think he was a great man. Now, I have to admit, I'm not the historian that some people might think, so there's probably a lot of people that know a lot more facts about these people. But yeah, my feelings on Theodore was B plus is what I would give him.
B plus. That sounds. That's probably what I would agree with, around B plus. I'd say maybe around the B for me, but B plus is definitely not too far off, anyways. All right. So the president during World War I, Woodrow Wilson. What are you giving him?
Least favorite, F minus.
F minus.
Yes, read The Creature from Jekyll Island. Woodrow Wilson was basically a like professor, this sort of Ivy League professor that was installed by the bankers, right? And they passed in 1913 on Christmas Eve. They passed the Federal Reserve Act and the Income Act, which I think is largely responsible with much of the problems we see. It allowed the income tax to be created. It allowed the power that was like there was absolutely one of the most important powers that our founding fathers thought was the federal government to print and coin money exclusively. It abdicated that to a private bank, right, which allowed the wealth of this country to begin to be destroyed in ways that we'll probably never recover from. And Woodrow Wilson was the face of all that. He was an absolute puppet, just disgusting, absolute display that I think was one of the worst things possible for this country. So I'm giving him an F minus and probably my least favorite president.
F minus. I definitely agree with that. I have, no disagreements there. All right. Next up, Franklin D. Roosevelt.
D minus. Not as bad as Woodrow Wilson, but probably his socialist policies or type policies probably extended the Great Depression for at least 5 years. You know, he just absolute bad. Didn't like the left wing policies he had. I guess you give him a little points for kind of being a badass, not letting people know that like he didn't have the use of his legs for most of the time, right? But not good. Did not care for FDR, so I FDR. That's what I'm getting him a D. So
FDR. So you say D minus, D plus, or just D?
D minus.
D minus. Okay.
Yeah, pretty bad.
All right, sounds good. All right, Harry S. Truman, the president during World War II this time.
I don't know a lot about Truman, if I'm honest. I'm gonna say that my gut feeling would say that probably. I don't know. I'm gonna give him. I don't know, ignorant C. I just really don't have a lot to say. Now, Truman, would he have been there at the I don't know. I'm not even going to speculate. People will make fun of me. So I don't know. I'm giving him a C, and I don't know much about him, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, Harry S. Truman. He's one of those. I think C is probably reasonable for not knowing much about him. John F. Kennedy.
Give him Hell Harry is a pretty cool slogan.
Yeah, right. There's at least that. Yeah.
Yeah. JFK. C plus. Obviously, a lot of his left-wing policies I didn't agree with. I do appreciate the fact that I do think he was trying to stand up against like institutions like the CIA to some degree, or what would have been the CIA at the time. So I'm going to give him a C plus. But there are certainly a lot of like sort of the policies he was pushing for that are more like big government types policies that I think set us back a decent amount. I don't think that he was a bad man necessarily, though. I think he was a flawed man, and someone that would have probably been interesting to hang out with. And he had as a human being, I think he had an incredible personality and charisma.
Yeah.
And he slept with Marilyn Monroe. I guess that says something. But yeah, so I'll go C plus, B minus region. We'll give him a C plus just because.
Now, just a quick question about him before we move on. He obviously was assassinated 2 years into his presidency. You think if he would have had his full presidency, if he stayed alive and was able to go through his entire presidency, you think your grade would have went up, or do you think it probably would have went down considering his?
I think it would have went up. I think that he probably was. My gut feeling, maybe it's a conspiratorial nature of me. My gut feeling is that he was about to sort of push back against a lot of the military-industrial complex. And I think that may be one of the reasons, if not the reason, that he was eliminated. So had he done that, even despite his more big government policies, I think that I would have said that he did much better. Yep.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Richard Nixon.
Let's give Nixon. Well, let me think about this. I think I'm going to give Nixon a B. Right. And I think Nixon gets a bad rap. Right now, he created like a lot of government agencies. Like, I think he created like the EPA. And then there was certainly like certain amount of things that he did, if I remember, like price controls and things like that, wage control. I don't like that stuff. However, Nixon, I think, right, was truly one of the most what's the word I want to use? I mean, Nixon wins in a landslide, right? Like he had captured the spirit of the country, and for that, and seen as someone that was sort of outside the orthodoxy and maybe have challenged some of these institutions, I think the entire Watergate thing is absolute bullshit. and was a conspiracy that was set up. You know, when you look at, I don't remember the specific details, but one of the two people that was digging around at the Watergate Hotel was like this dude that worked for the intel agencies, and it looks like it was a setup from the get go, and it was designed to rail against this. So a lot of these like sort of economic policies he's had, I wasn't a big fan of, but I guess I push him up in the ranks for being smeared so unfairly and being like, you know, his image as being this uber corrupt guy. I would rather that people disliked him for the creation of the EPA and like wage and price controls than, you know, as this super corrupt guy, because I think it was all bullshit setup. And I think that, you know, it was very similar to how they tried to railroad Trump. So I have sympathies for him, and for that I give him a B.
All right, a B for him. Now Ronald Reagan.
Uh shit. B minus,
B
right? I know
minus.
he's the father of modern conservatism, blah blah blah, but all of it's overshadowed by the problem of our time, which is mass immigration, which he's instrumental in allowing,
Yeah.
because he was duped in to sort of signing this bill that allowed amnesty under the premise of we'll secure the border, and it was bullshit. So I think Reagan's a good guy who was misled, but I'm judging based on results, and seeing as how I think immigration is such a massive problem, and I could trace it back directly in the modern times to Reagan. Yeah, no bueno for me. So I'm
Yeah,
giving him a B
he
minus.
had that iconic clip where a balloon popped and he goes, "Miss me," or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, remember?
he's another very interesting and likable guy. He really is. He's he's got to be right up there. Like Reagan, Trump, the actors, man. Like you know, very interesting guy. Another dude that yeah, you know, people attempting him, and you know, one of the all-time best debate lines, right? Which is just so simple. Here we go again. You know, when he said that, and
Yeah.
then there was when he knew the age was going to be an attack of his, and so he kept saying like my young opponent. It was a very interesting debate tactic of how to turn. Incidentally, I'll give you my favorite story on that. There's a writer named Hunter S. Thompson. The movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is about, and Hunter S. Thompson at one point, two stories about him that are funny. He was covering a campaign trail, and he's in the press poll, and he asked the governor or whatever candidate that he's covering. He says, "What about the allegations that you like cheated on your wife with a man or something like that?" And the candidate's like, "What are you talking? There are no such allegations." And he's like, "Of course they are. I made them up,"
Yeah.
which is very good. And then the other thing he did was he was running against someone who was balding, who had just a little hair. So Hunter S. Thompson shaved his head completely bald and would keep calling his opponent my long-haired opponent because he thought it was funny since he was bald now. So yes, but yeah, it's Reagan. Reagan, absolute a character, another dude with an absolute interesting life. Seems like a very likable guy, and I don't think that it was malicious that he went for this amnesty deal. But judging on the results of it, absolute disaster for this country that we're still paying for. So
No, 100%. You know, he had that charisma for sure, but you know, he wasn't perfect like any other president. You know, and he made that decision and it backfired, and we're seeing the ramifications to this day. So,
yep,
but nonetheless, move on to the second to last president that we're gonna be ranking here, Barack Obama, the man, the myth, and the legend.
F plus. I don't think he's quite as bad as Woodrow Wilson. I think that not only were his policies a disaster and continuing to champion some of the policies of George W. Bush I didn't like the Patriot Act, the bombing campaigns. He bailed out the banks, which I think set a precedent for a bubble that we're still going to have to contend with someday down the future. But what he did to culture and sort of setting back race relations 50 years, if not longer, and sort of laying the groundwork for everything we've been talking about today for the radical left to become more and more insane, I think is unforgivable. And the only president that potentially would be worse than him, in my opinions, would be Woodrow Wilson, who I would probably still put at the bottom, and Joe Biden. That'd be about it.
All right, sounds good. Final president, Donald J. Trump.
I'll give Trump an A minus. Uh, so, you know, obviously two different terms. I voted for Trump for two reasons. One was to out the corruption, and he did so not because he's playing 4D chess, but because the institutions couldn't help themselves. When you have a total vice grip on all power, and any potential adversary comes in that you don't control, you're going to do what you know best. It's a nail and you're a hammer, and you're going to just smack it. And so now we know it's for every normie to see how corrupt all of these institutions are: the FBI, the mainstream media, the IRS, the EPA, the State Department, the DOJ, all of it. It's out there to see. The other reason I voted for him was to do something about it. And he did not. In his first term, he did not. It was a failure. And but at least outing that corruption was a good thing. He's the first president in my lifetime that at least paid lip service to doing something to actually benefit the American people and to have pride in the American people. In the second term, I think that, you know, it's starting to get a little positive that we see some arrests being made, which I put as the most important thing. I think the idea of recognizing that there's a problem with the manufacturing and the middle class in this country being railroaded for so long, and attempting his best to, through tariffs and other policies, to regulate that or to do better with that, and then securing the border. He needs to do way more on deportations. But I think all of these things are in a positive direction. Epstein stuff's a disaster, the way he handled that. It's not so much what he did, it's what he said, you know, basically saying it's a Democrat conspiracy. And if you don't believe me, you know, I don't want your support anymore. Absolute, one of the worst things I can imagine a politician ever saying. But the big thing, the reason that Trump is so good, the number one thing, and people are going to be like, this is absolute bullshit. Donald Trump, his mere existence and his bravado and the way he talks and what he represents have moved the cultural conversation into ways that I would not have imagined possible for at least another decade. It is now okay to be like, fuck you. I unabashedly say I'm tired of this immigration shit. And that wouldn't have been possible with J.D. Vance or Ron DeSantis or Jeb Bush. It just wouldn't have. And just his charisma and his, you know, that to me is worth, that's worth, you know, all these shitty, like, yeah, but he's not a fiscal conservative. Yeah, fuck him for that. I agree. He spends way too much money. Yep. But that thing alone, right, that's why I give him an A-. So also, I think he'd be a very interesting guy to hang out with as well. He's up there with, you know, some of these presidents, it's like they're sort of bland politician types.
Yeah.
And some of them are these larger than life characters. You know, George Washington, Teddy Roosevelt, and Donald Trump. You got to put him in that list. You know, it's like he is, if you 200 years from now, you know, God willing that things haven't gone south really terribly, and you're looking back in history, and, you know, our you know, prodigy that'll be there, or progeny that'll be there then, are looking back like, what? So this dude hosted this TV show, right? And he did the Miss America pageant, and then he's president, he gets shot, and he's like saying fight like hell. Like, it's crazy. It's a crazy story. It sounds like fiction, but it's real. And
No,
you know, so yeah, I give him an A-.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, listen, Rob, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. You know, it's been an honor and truly humbling experience to be able to speak to you, man. I think the conversation went phenomenally. Really, again, I really appreciate you coming on.
It's been my pleasure. You can find me at Normal America with Rob Noerr on YouTube, Normal America on Rumble, and just Normal America or Rob Noerr on all places like X and other social media platforms. Anytime you would ever want me to have on, I had an absolute pleasure. I thought it was a lot of fun. I know I have a big mouth and I talk a lot.
No, that's awesome. You know, that's what we got you here on for, you know?
I couldn't be happier with it. And I'm absolutely honored that you watch my show and that you invited me on. I would do it anytime.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for coming on. Just to get through some of the ending, you know, the closing out, you know, I guess notifications or whatever the case may be. Thank you so much for watching. To everybody who tuned in, you could have been spending your time anywhere else, but you chose to spend it here. Thank you very, very much for that. Disclaimer: the views expressed on the Cat5Boys podcast by the individual guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the Cat5Boys podcast. Further disclaimer: the topics that we speak on can get a little bit dark, a little bit sensitive at times. If that's not your thing, this might not be the show for you. Go tune into some Coco Melon if that's the case. We have clips. If you can't catch the full shows, you want to get some of the best bits. We do post clips on YouTube Shorts. We post clips on Instagram and on TikTok, so go check those out. Every single one of my social media pages and all the places I post content are the same name, at Cat5Boys, the same way it's written. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love to have you on. If you want to talk about something going on in your life that's pretty interesting, maybe you want to debate me about one of my beliefs that I hold, or maybe you just want to, you know, like I said, you just want to have a conversation about something interesting going on in your life, we would love to have you on. Just DM us on Instagram at Cat5Boys, giving us a little bit about yourself, something about what you want to speak on, and we'll have you on as soon as it's convenient for both parties. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff. You know what I mean? We love the comments, so keep those flowing. I stream on Twitch at Codename Soap. That's going to be in the description of this video and every other video that I post. So if you guys want to check that out, every single Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. I have a merch store. I sell rosaries. Now, I don't like to call it merch because it's a little more important to me than what that kind of gives off. But for lack of a better term, we'll call it merch. So I sell that on an Etsy store. If you guys want to check that out, you don't have to buy anything, but even if you just give it a look, that'd be greatly appreciated. With that being said, again, Rob, thank you so very much for coming on the show. Oh, also, one more thing before we close it out. Modern Day Debate will be hosting DebateCon in Nashville, Tennessee. On what day was that, by the way?
It's going to be the 15th. I'm sorry, let me get that. It's November 15th and 16th. And if you go to @ModernDayDebate on X, it'll be one of his top tweets there, and you'll be able to get tickets there. So 15th and 16th, you can come to meet me, a bunch of other people, including Andrew Wilson, a bunch of people connected with the Crucible, a bunch of people connected with Modern Day Debate. It's going to be a party, not just a debate, but there's going to be a ton of debates going on. It's going to be a blast. So that is in Nashville on November 15th and 16th, and you can get those tickets at Modern Day Debates X channel. There's a link there for you.
If you're able to go, to Nashville, Tennessee to go attend that show, go ahead and do that. So the link to that as well will be down in the description of this video as well. So again, thank you so very much for watching and tuning in. Thank you very much, Rob, for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy man, and you took time out of your schedule to come on the show. It was a great conversation. I appreciated having you on.
Thanks so much. It was my pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Everybody have a great night. God bless. God bless you, Rob. Everybody have a great night.